Chapter 23. Just because Clancy had all that power, it didn't mean he actually used it. It was strange to me that someone who could influence the thoughts of others had been born with a personality that naturally drew people to him. I witnessed it firsthand when he offered to give me a tour of the camp. Clancy waved at the few kids in black around the fire pit. His presence sent a buzz around the air. Smiles bloomed on every face we passed, and there wasn't a single person that didn't wave at us or call out some kind of greeting, even if it was just a quick yo. Do you ever talk to any of them about what you've been through? I asked. He glanced at me around the corner of his eye, as if the question startled him. I watched as he tucked his hands in the back pockets of his pants, his shoulders slumping with the thoughts. They've put their trust in me, he said with a smile. I don't want to worry them. They have to believe I can take care of them, otherwise our system wouldn't work. This system was something else. It's one thing to carve the PSI symbol into the side of the buildings and string up banners over porches, but to actually internalize the message? My first true example of this came when the girl in charge of the camp's gardens stomped up to us on the main trail and demanded that Clancy punish 3 kids who she believed had been stealing fruit under her nose. It took me 2 seconds of listening to Clancy talk the situation out to realize that the way of life at East River wasn't built on a foundation of hard and fast rules, but rested almost entirely on his good judgment and what everyone under him perceived to be fair. The accused were 3 green boys, only a few months out of cubbies. The girl in charge of the garden had left them sitting in the dark dirt like ducks in a row. Each wore black shirts, but their jeans were in different states of disarray. I stood off to the side as Clancy knelt in front of them, completely unbothered by the wet earth staining his own pressed pants. Did you steal the fruit? Clancy asked gently. Please tell me the truth. The 3 boys exchanged looks. It fell on the larger one sitting in the middle to answer. Yes, we did. We're very sorry. I raised my eyebrows. Thank you for being honest, Clancy said. Can I ask you why? The boys were silent for a few minutes. Finally, through some coaxing, Clancy got the truth again. Pete has been really sick and hasn't been able to come to meals. He didn't want anyone to know because he thought he'd get in trouble for not coming to cleaning duty this week. And he didn't want to let you down. We're sorry. We're so sorry. I understand, Clancy said, but if Pete is really sick, you should have told me. You said the last camp meeting that the med stuff was low. He didn't want to take any medicine in case someone else needed it. It sounds like he needs it, though, if he's too weak to come to meals, Clancy pointed out. You know that when you take food from the garden, there's a chance that it could throw off the meals we have planned for everyone. The boys nodded, looking miserable. Clancy looked up at the kids gathered around us and asked, what would you like them to do in return for taking the fruit? The girl in charge opened her mouth, but an older boy stepped up and leaned the rake in his hands against the simple fence surrounding the garden. If they're willing to help weed for a few days, a couple of us will take turns sitting with Pete and making sure he gets meals and medicine. Clancy nodded. That sounds fair. What does everyone else think? The thought of the girl in charge was going to stamp her foot in anger when everyone agreed on that punishment. She was deeply unhappy with the outcome, if the red in her cheeks was any indication. This isn't just a one-time problem, Clancy, she said, walking us out to the garden. People think they can just come in here and take what they want, and it's not like we can lock it like a storeroom. I promise I'll put it on the agenda at our camp meeting next month, Clancy said, with one of his smiles. It'll be right at the top of new business. That seemed to satisfy her, at least for now. With one curious look flung in my direction, the Empress of Vegetables turned on her heel and marched back into her domain. Wow, I said. She's a real gem. He shrugged, absent-mindedly fiddling with his right ear. She has a valid point. If we start running low on food in the storeroom, we have to lean on the gardens. And if that's been picked over, we're in trouble. I think everyone here has come to understand how interconnected life is at East River. Hey, do you mind if I stop by and visit Pete? I smiled. Of course not. The little boy was buried under a mound of blankets. If the bare mattresses around it were any indication, the other boys had gladly donated theirs to his pile. When his flushed face finally emerged from the covers, I said hello and introduced myself. Clancy stayed to speak with him for a good 15 minutes, but I waited outside in the fresh air, watching the comings and goings of the camp. Kids waved and smiled at me like I had been there for years, not a few days. I waved back, something tightening in my chest. I don't know what it had dawned on me, or if it had been a slow, creeping realization. But I had begun to understand that black, the color that I had trained myself to fear and hate, was the same thing that allowed these kids to feel a small measure of pride and solidarity. You'll never feel alone here, Clancy said, shutting the cabin door behind him. We walked to the laundry building next, then made a stop by the wash houses to test the faucets and make sure the lights were still working. Every now and then, someone stopped Clancy to ask a question or air a complaint, but he was never anything other than patient and understanding. I watched him unravel a misunderstanding between cabin mates, take suggestions for dinner, and give his opinion on whether the security team needed more kids assigned to it. By the time we reached the cabin that served as the Cubby's classroom, I was dead on my feet. Clancy, however, was ready to give his weekly lesson on U.S. history. The room was small and crowded, but well lit and decorated with colorful posters and drawings. I spotted Zoo in her pink gloves even before I saw the teenage girl at the front of the room tracing a finger down the length of the Mississippi River on an old map of the United States. Hina sat down next to Zoo, of course, frantically scribbling down notes. I suppose it shouldn't have surprised me, but the kids actually cheered when Clancy appeared in the doorway. The girl relinquished the front of the room to him immediately. All right, Clancy began. Who can tell me where we left off? Pilgrims, a dozen voices chimed in. Pilgrims, he continued. What are those? How about you, Jamie? Do you remember who the pilgrims were? A girl about Zoo's age sat straight up. People in England were being mean to them because of their religion, so they sailed to America and landed at Plymouth Rock. Can anyone tell me what they did after they got there? About 10 hands shot up in the air. He picked a little boy close to him. He might have been a green, but he could have just as easily been a yellow or a blue. My usual method of distinguishing kids from one another was failing me now that we were all mixed together, which I suppose was the point. They set up a colony, the boy answered. You got it. It was the second English colony, after the one set up in Jamestown in 1607, not too far from where we are now, actually. Clancy picked up the map the teacher had been using and pointed out both places. While they were on the Mayflower, they created a Mayflower Compact, which was an agreement and guaranteed everyone would cooperate and act in a way that would be beneficial to the colony. When they arrived, they faced a lot of hardships, but they all worked together and created a community where they were free from England's crowned rule and could practice their faith openly. He stopped pacing for a moment, casting his dark eyes out over his audience. Sound familiar? Beside me, Zoo was all wide-eyed. I was sitting close enough to see the freckles on her face, but more importantly, feel the happiness radiating off her. I felt my own heart lift. Hina leaned over and whispered something in her ear, and her smile only grew. Sounds like us, someone called from the back of the room. You bet, Clancy said, and talked for the next hour and a half about how the Pilgrims interacted with the native tribes, about Jamestown, and all the things my mother used to teach in her high school. And when he used up all his time, he took a small bow and motioned for me to follow him outside amidst all the groans and complaints from the cubbies. We were both still chuckling as we walked to the fire pit where they were just starting to set up for dinner. I felt a number of eyes latch onto us immediately, but I didn't care. I actually felt a small thrill of pride. So, Clancy said as we stood beside the office's porch, listening to the bells calling everyone to dinner. What do you think? I think I'm ready for my first lesson, I said. Oh, Miss Daly, a smile curled at the edge of his lips. You already had your first lesson. You just didn't realize it. 2 weeks passed like a page tearing from an old book. I spent so many hours of so many days locked inside Clancy's room, pushing images from his mind, blocking him from trying to do the same, talking about the League, Thurmond, and White Noise that we both fell out of sync with our camp schedule. We had his daily meetings, but instead of asking me to leave, he had me wait on the other side of the white curtain, where we were now conducting most of our practice sessions. There were times he had to go out and inspect cabins or handle an argument, but I almost always stayed up in that musty old room. There were books and music and a TV at my disposal, which meant I never once had the opportunity to be bored. I still saw Chubbs at some of our meals, but Clancy often had brought food brought to us. Zoo was even harder to track down because when she wasn't in class, she was with Hina or one of the older yellows. The only time I really spent with the two of them was at night before the camp lights were shut off. Chubbs, more often than not, was a ghost, always working, looking for ways to catch Clancy's attention by stitching up the kid who'd split her lip or suggesting a more efficient way of harvesting the garden. The longest I sat with him was when he took out my stitches. Zoo, for her part, delighted in showing me what she had learned in school and the tricks the other yellows had taught her outside of it. After a few days, she stopped wearing her gloves. It only really hit me one night when she was brushing out my hair. I had pushed away to go switch off the lights, but she beat me to it. She snapped her fingers, and the overhead light blinked out. That's amazing, I gushed. But it would have been a terrible lie to say I didn't feel a pang of jealousy and how much progress she had made. I had only been able to block Clancy out of my mind once, and not before he had found out about what had happened to Sam. Interesting, had been his only comment. While I saw Zoo and Chubbs every day, Liam was a completely different matter. The security team had him scheduled for their second watch, 5 p.m. to 5 a.m., all the way at the far west end of the lake. He was usually too tired to stumble back to the cabin after his shift and spent most of his days sleeping in the tents that they had set up near the entrance. I saw him once or twice talking animatedly to a crowd at breakfast or visiting with Zoo at Cubby's, but it was always from the window of Clancy's room. I missed him to the point of a real physical ache, but I understood that he had responsibilities. When I had thought to spare, I usually went to him, but I was so focused on my lessons that it was hard to let my mind drift to anything for too long. Clancy laughed, drawing my attention back to him from the window, and I suddenly wasn't sure how I could let my thoughts wander. He was wearing a white polo shirt that emphasized the natural glow of his skin, and pressed khaki pants casually rolled at the ankle. Whenever he was out with others, he was properly buttoned up, his clothes clean and ironed within an inch of their lives, but not with me. Here we didn't have to put on any show, not for each other. When we first started these lessons, it had been from either side of his ridiculous desk. It felt like I was squaring off against a school principal, not being guided through a PSI lesson by my freak guru. Next, we had tried the floor, but after a few hours of sitting, my back felt like it was ready to crumble. He had been the one to suggest sitting on his narrow bed. He had taken one end and I had taken the other, and then we started inching closer, bridging the distance on his red quilt nearer to each other with each lesson, until one day I snapped out of whatever haze Clancy's dark eyes had put me in and realized our knees were pressing up against one another. Sorry, I mumbled. When I turned back toward him, can we go from the top? He found everything about me amusing, apparently. Take it from the top? Are we rehearsing for a play? Should I get Mike in here to start building props? I'm not sure why I laughed at that. It wasn't even at all that funny. Maybe trying to throw my brain at his for the last 20 minutes had made me loopy. The only thing I seemed sure of was how big and reassuring his hand felt as it took mine and squeezed. Try again, he said. This time, try and imagine that those invisible hands you were telling me about are actually knives, cut through the haze. Easier said than done. I nodded and closed my eyes, trying to fight back the flood of color in my cheeks. Every time he used my lame way of explaining how my brain seemed to work, I felt embarrassed, even a little bit ashamed. He had laughed the first time I made the comparison, waved his fingers in front of my face like he was casting a spell over me. He had tried a number of different methods to try to demonstrate how to do it. We had gone down to the pantry so I could watch him slip into Lizzie's mind and, for no other purpose than to make me laugh, ask her to cluck like a chicken. Clancy had tried to show me how easy it was to affect moods of multiple people at once, settling an argument between two kids without saying a single word. At one point, we'd sat on the stoop of the office and he'd read the thoughts of everyone who passed by, including poor Hina, who was apparently harboring a desperate crush on Clancy. The truth was, he could do everything and anything. Block me out, push in an image, a feeling, a fear. Once I was sure he had even passed on a dream to me. I didn't want to feel like I was disappointing him, and not when he was giving me so much of his precious time. The thought made everything inside of me clench with fear. He told me to take it slow, that it had taken him years to master all of this, but it was impossible not to want to rush through those lessons, to get a grip on my abilities as soon as possible. It seemed to me that the best way to repay his kindness was to master myself to the point where I could stand beside him and feel pride, not shame, in what I could do. Until I could unlock his secrets, we were never going to be equals. He had called me his friend several times during our lessons in front of the other kids, and it surprised me how much I recoiled at the term. Clancy had hundreds of friends. I wanted to be more than that. I wanted him to trust me and confide in me. Sometimes I just wanted him to lean closer, to tuck my hair behind my ear. It was a repulsively girly thought, though, and I wasn't sure what dark corner of my mind it had come crawling out of. I think my head was playing tricks on me because I knew what I really wanted was for Liam to do that, do more than that. But every time I tried to slip into Clancy's mind, I was thrown back. Clancy had so much control over his powers that I didn't even have time to feel the usual disorienting rush of thoughts and memories. Every single time, it was like he had drawn a little white curtain around his brain. No amount of tearing could bring it down. That didn't mean I didn't try, though. Clancy smiled, reaching over to brush my hair over my shoulder. His hand lingered there, sliding over to cup the back of my neck. I knew he was staring at me, but I couldn't bring my eyes to meet his, even as he leaned closer. You can do this. I know you can. My teeth clenched until I felt my jaw pop. A muscle twitched in my right cheek. I tried drawing the hundreds and thousands of wandering fingers together, focusing them into something sharp and lethal enough to penetrate his wall. I squeezed his hand, increasing my grip until I'm sure he felt pain, and threw the invisible dagger toward him, diving it as fast and hard as I could. And still, the moment I brushed up against that white wall, I felt like he had reached over and slapped me across the face. He sighed and dropped his hand. Sorry, I said, hating the silence that followed. No, I'm the one that's sorry, Clancy shook his head. I'm a terrible teacher. Trust me, you're not the problem in this equation. Ruby, 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 he said. This isn't an equation. You can't solve it in 3 steps. Otherwise, you wouldn't have accepted my help, right? I looked down as he began to rub his thumb over my upturned palm. A slow, lazy circle. It was strangely calming and almost hypnotizing to watch. That's true, I began, but you should know I haven't exactly been honest. That got his attention. The others. They were looking for you because they thought you were some magic man that could get them home. But I wanted to look for you because I was banking on the rumors that you were an orange and that you might be willing to teach me. Clancy's dark brow drew together, but he didn't let go of my hand. Instead, he rested his other palm on the sliver of space between our crossed legs. But that was before I told you what the league was planning for you, he said. What did you want me to help you with? No, let me guess. Something to do with what happened to your parents, right? How I erased myself, I confirmed. How to keep it from happening again. Clancy closed his eyes for a brief moment, and when he finally opened them, his eyes seemed darker than before, almost black. I leaned in closer, picking up on a strange mix of sadness, guilt, and something that seemed to be seeping through his pores. I wish I could help you with that, he said, but the truth is, I can't do what you can. I have no idea how to help you. I have no idea how to help you. Of course he didn't. Martin was an orange too, but he didn't have the same abilities I did. I wonder why I'd assume the slip kid would. If you tell me about it and explain how you think it works, then I might be able to figure something out. It wasn't so much that I couldn't talk about it. It was that I didn't want to. Not right then. I knew myself well enough that I could predict the choked words and teary explanation that would follow. Every time I let myself think about what had happened, I always came out the other end exhausted and shaking, feeling every bit as scared and hopeless and horrific as I did when those moments had actually occurred. He was watching me from under those dark lashes of his, and a look of understanding came to him. His thumb hovering over the pulse point on my wrist. Ah, it's a Benjamin. I should have expected that. I'm sorry. Seeing my look of confusion, he explained. Benjamin was my old tutor back before everything went to hell. He passed when I was very young, but I still can't talk about it. It still hurts. One side of his mouth curled up in a rueful smile. Maybe you don't have to say anything at all, though. We could try something else. Like what? Like you blocking me this time, not the other way around. I bet it'll be easier for you. Why do you say that? Because you're not vicious enough to put up a good offense. Trust me, that's a compliment. He waited for me to smile before continuing. You are guarded. You don't show your cards to anyone. There are times that you're impossible to read. I don't mean to be, I interrupted. Clancy only waved me off. It's not a bad thing, he said. In fact, it'll help you. Well, it certainly hadn't helped me fend off Martin. Can you sense when someone is trying to break into your head? He asked. There is a tingling sensation. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. What should I do when I feel it? You have to push right back up against them, throw them off whatever track they might have been on. In my experience, the things you really want to protect, like memories or dreams, They have their own natural defenses. You just need to add another wall. Every time I tried to get into your head, it was like a white curtain blocked me. Clancy nodded. That's the way I do it. When I feel the sensation, I push back the image of that curtain and don't let up, no matter what. So, what I want you to do is bring to mind some kind of secret or memory, something you wouldn't necessarily want me or anyone else to see, and I want you to drop your own curtain down to protect it. I might not have been doing a good job of hiding my hesitation because he took both of my hands in his again, lacing our fingers. Come on, he said. What's the worst that could happen? I see some embarrassing moment. I think we're good enough friends now that you can trust me when I say I won't tell a soul about any falls or public puking. What about streaking and eating playground sand? He pretended to consider it for a moment, grinning. I suppose I could refrain from sharing that with the entire camp at dinner. What a fair, just leader you are, I said. After a moment, I added, do you really consider me a friend? Or are you just saying that because you won't want to see me get my four front teeth knocked out when I try to play soccer? Clancy shook his head and laughed. His favorite stories always seemed to be the ones that involved me trying to pretend I was a boy, or the fast food binges my dad used to take me on when my mom was out of town at a teacher's conference. They were so completely foreign to his experience, I realized, that I must have seemed like an alien. Of course I consider you my friend. Actually, he began, his voice low. When he glanced at me again, his dark eyes were burning with the kind of intensity that made me feel like my head was full of air, ready to float away. I consider you a lot more than that. What do you mean? You may have been looking for me, but let's just say I was waiting for you. It's been a long time since I felt like someone understood what I was going through. Being an orange, you can't compare it to what the others are. They don't understand us or what we can do. It's only us, came a small voice in my mind. It's just the two of us. I squeeze his hands. I know. His intention seemed to wander, his eyes carrying over to the other side of the room, toward his computer and TV. I thought I detected a glimmer of sadness in his eyes, a real kind of pain, but just as quickly it was gone, replaced by his usual confident expression. You ready to try? I nodded. I promise I've been trying. Please, please don't give up on me. I was surprised when I felt his hands pull free from mine, stunned. When I felt them glide up my bare arms and over my shoulders, I didn't stop him. This was the thing about Clancy, the thing I was quickly coming to terms with. With him, I didn't have to be afraid, not of what I could do, intentionally or by mistake. I didn't have to throw up every defense I possessed just to keep my brain wandering still, because Clancy was more than capable of keeping me out of his head. But Liam, he was something precious, something I could break with a single misstep, someone I couldn't be with, not right then, not the way I was. Clancy leaned forward and began his work. I leaned forward too, right up against his chest, where it was warm and smelled of pine and old books and thousands of possibilities I had never known. I didn't block him on the first try. I didn't even block him on the fifth try. It took 3 days of his witnessing almost every sour, cheek reddening memory in my head for me to finally throw up some kind of defense. Think deeper, he told me. Think about something you wouldn't want anyone else to know. Those memories will provoke your strongest defenses. There wasn't anything left that he hadn't already seen. I swear. The kid could have been a brain surgeon for how sharp and accurate his pokes and prods were. Every time I brought to mind a memory or thought and tried to put an invisible wall around it, my defenses crumbled, as flimsy as waxed paper. Still, he didn't get frustrated. You can do this, Clancy kept repeating. I know you can. You're capable of more than you'll admit to yourself. It was his strange badgering for some kind of juicy memory that finally produced my actual first result. Does it have to be a memory? I asked. He seemed to consider this. Maybe you should try something else this time, something you imagine. It could have been my mind playing tricks, but his face suddenly appeared much closer to mine. Something you want. Or someone? The way he said it made me think it was a question. Seriously, one cloaked by a casual voice. I kept my face impassive. Okay, I said. I think I'm ready. Clancy didn't look so sure, but I was. This particularly fantasy had been creeping up on my dreams for weeks, invading the slips of time when I wasn't holed up practicing my abilities. It came to me in the middle of our third night at East River right at the hour that separated day from night. I startled awake in bed, confused as I listened to Chubb snore and Zoo toss and turn. Every inch of my skin had tingled as I tried to process what I had just seen. If any of it had actually happened, if any of it might actually happen, this was a dream I could never share, one I carried deep inside my heart, tucked so far down that I hadn't even realized it was there until it sprang out of me, fully formed. I must have dreamed we were in spring. The cherry blossom trees at the end of my parents' street in Salem were in full bloom. We drove past them in Black Betty, Liam and I, sitting up front together, listening to a Led Zeppelin song that might not have even been real. Outside my parents' house were white balloons, tied off on either side of the white fence's gate, floating arrows that pointed up to the open front door. Liam took my hand, wearing exactly what he had worn the day I had met him, and together we walked straight down the house's main hallway through the pale yellow kitchen until we found the door to the backyard and everyone outside waiting. Everyone, my parents, Grams, Zoo, Chubbs, Sam, all sitting around a blanket my parents had spread out over the grass, eating whatever it was my dad was grilling. Mom was running around, tying up more balloons, her hands still stained with the dark dirt after planting all the new pale flowers that flooded over what had once been a yard of plain grass. We said hello to everyone. I hugged Sam. I pointed out the birds up in the trees to Zoo and introduced Chubbs to my mother. And then Liam bent down and kissed me, and there were no words to describe that. Clancy's intrusion came like all the others had before, first with a tingle, then with a roar. I had been so lost in thinking about the dream that I hadn't even felt him take my hand and start the trial run. I liked Clancy a lot, more than I ever expected, but he didn't have a place in this dream. There was nothing there I wanted to share with him. I clenched my hand back, hard, and threw everything I had into sending my other set of hands out from inside me, like a shove. His curtain strategy hadn't worked for me, but this one, using offense like a defense, this one may be a little too effective. Even before I opened my eyes, I felt Clancy jerk back, sucking in a hiss of what sounded like pain. "Oh my God," I said when I finally shook the haze from my mind. "I'm so sorry." But when Clancy looked up, he was smiling. "Told you," he said. "Told you that you'd figure it out." "Can we do it again?" I asked. I want to make sure it wasn't a fluke. Clancy rubbed at his forehead. "Can we give it a rest for a little while? I feel like you just tackled my brain." But Clancy didn't get a rest. Almost as soon as the words had left my mouth, we both heard a very different kind of warning. There was a shrill wail from the other side of the room, one I had never heard before, almost like a car alarm. He winced, tucking his head down to escape the noise, even as he jumped up from the bed. He made his way to the desk, flipping open his laptop lid. His fingers flew as he typed in his password, the blue-white screen of the laptop illuminating his pale face. I came to stand behind him just as he clicked open a new program. "What's happening?" I asked. "Clance?" He didn't look up. One of the camp's perimeter alarms was triggered. "Don't worry, it might be nothing. We've had animals step a little too close to the wires before." It took me a minute to realize what I was looking at. 4 different colored videos, one in each corner of the screen. 4 different viewpoints of the camp's boundaries. Clancy leaned forward, bracing his hands on either side of his laptop. He reached across me to get to the wireless black radio sitting on the other side of the desk. He never once took his eyes off the screen. "Hayes, do you read me?" There was a moment of silence before Hayes's gruff, "Yeah, what's up?" came crackling through the speaker. The southeast perimeter alarm was triggered. I'm watching the feed now, but I think he was going to say, "I don't see anything or anyone," but his next words had me ducking under his arm to take a look at the screen myself. "Yeah, I see a man and a woman, both in camo, unfriendlies by the look of it." And there they were. They looked well into middle age, but it was hard to be sure. Both were wearing what could only be described as hunting attire. Head to toe camouflage. Even their faces appeared to have been painted brown. "Got it. I'll take care of it." "Thanks. Get them to back off, will you?" Clancy said carefully, then turned the volume of the radio all the way down. "Southeast perimeter. Good. Not Liam's area." I let out a grateful sigh. My eyes were still on the screen when Clancy shut the laptop lid. "Let's get back to work. Sorry for the distraction." I could feel my surprise betray me. "Don't you need to go out there?" What's Hayes going to do to them? Clancy only waved me off. Again. Don't worry about it, Ruby. Everything's under control. One crack might not be enough to bring the fortress's defenses down, but it was enough to splinter it into two cracks, then three, and then four. After the initial breakthrough, it became a mission of mine to find different ways to slip into Clancy's mind. I never got to stay for very long before I was unceremoniously tossed out, of course, but every small victory spurred me on to achieve another, and then another. I could catch him when his thoughts were focused on something else, trick him into trying to protect one memory when I was really going after another. It surprised Clancy, but I thought it also in a secret way excited him, enough at least to have me start practicing on others. It was like running downhill in a way. The momentum carried me through the sorts of experiments, big and small. I made a spectacular mess of dinner one night when I pulled each one of the six kids working on it aside and planted six very different ideas of what they were supposed to be making for a meal, all at the same time. I had one girl so convinced her name was Theodore, and she began to cry whenever anyone told her otherwise. It became so easy, in fact, to convince someone to do what I asked or suggest that they had done for something they really hadn't. That Clancy told me it was time to move on to trying to do the same without having to touch the unsuspecting subject first. I was getting there, slowly, and maybe not entirely surely, but there was something almost delicious about the feeling the same powerful swell of abilities that had once terrorized me corked and controlled. Every aspect of them became sharper, easier. But on the Tuesday that followed, we were interrupted again. One of the older yellows, a girl named Kylie, came pounding on Clancy's door. She didn't wait to be let in. I actually fell off the bed with the force of her entrance. What's this about you denying our request to leave? Tangles of dark hair flew around her face. You let Adam leave. You let Sarah's group leave. You even let Greg and his guys go. And you and I both know that the collective brain power of a fly. The floorboard squeaked as I took a step back towards the bed. Clancy had left the curtain open when he went to answer the door, so Kylie had a full view of me. She rolled back toward Clancy, who had put two pacifying hands on her shoulders. Oh my God, are you in here fooling around? Did you even look at my proposal? I spent days on that. I read it 3 times, Clancy said, motioning me forward with his hand. He looked at her with the same calming smile and patience that he had shown me since our lessons began. I'm happy to discuss why I had to decline now. Ruby, tomorrow? And just like that, I found myself outside in the morning sunshine. The spring weather was still sporadic, cold and dismal one day, perfectly warm the next. Spending 2 weeks holed up with Clancy had made keeping up with the season's bipolar tendencies even harder. I stripped my sweatshirt off and pulled my hair up in a messy bun. My first thought was to check on Zoo, but I didn't want to interrupt her lessons. I tried to find Chubbs in the garden, but the girl in charge told me in her bossiest voice that she hadn't seen him in a week, and she was going to rat him out to Clancy for the punishment he deserved. Punishment? I repeated, bristling, but she didn't elaborate. I found him in the next logical place. You know, I called as he stepped out into the dock, bread is actually really bad for ducks. Chubbs didn't so much as look as I sat down next to him, but it only prompted him to stand up and stalk away, leaving his bag and book behind. Hey, I called. What's your problem? No response. Chubbs? Charles! He rolled back around. You want to know what my problem is? Where do I even start? How about it's been almost a month and we're still here? How about the fact that you and Lee and Suzume are all off making friends and skipping around even though we're supposed to be working to learn a way to get home? Where is this coming from? I asked. Maybe he hadn't fit in as naturally as Liam and Zoo had, but I saw him talking to the other kids he worked with. He seemed okay. Maybe not happy, but then again, when was he ever? This place really isn't so bad. Ruby, it's horrible, he burst out. Horrible. We're told when to eat, when to sleep, what to wear, and we're forced to work. How is this any different from camp? I sucked in a sharp breath. You're the one that wanted to come here. I'm sorry it's not living up to your high and mighty expectations, but it works for us. If you just try, you could be happy here. We're safe. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Just because your parents didn't want you, it doesn't mean the rest of ours don't. Maybe you're not in a hurry to get back, but I am. He might as well have shot me straight through the chest. I felt all of the blood leave my heart in one as one of his hands came up to clutch his dark hair. I've been working so hard. I've been trying. And God, you didn't even ask him, did you? Ask him? But I knew, as soon as the words left my mouth, I knew exactly what promise I had neglected to keep. The anger in me deflated. I'm so sorry. I've been so wrapped up in lessons that I forgot. Well, I didn't, he said, and left me standing alone in the sunlight. An hour later, I was under a stream of warm water, pressing my hands to my face. The camp's washroom, one for the boys, one for the girls, were about as glamorous as the outhouse. The floors were beveled concrete, the shower stalls wood planks, and plastic curtains crawling with black mold. We used the rooms every night to brush our teeth and wash our faces, and once or twice a week to shower. But today, without floral shampoo and conditioner perfuming the air, I realized that the cavernous room smelled like sawdust. I stayed in there until I heard the bells signal the end of lunch. I still hadn't formulated a plan for the rest of the day when I walked outside and into the one person I hadn't realized I was desperate to see. Liam stumbled back a few steps at impact, his wet hair clinging to his cheeks longer than I remembered. Oh my God, I said with a laugh, pressing a hand to my chest. You scared the hell out of me. Sorry about that. He smiled, extending a hand towards me. Hey, I don't think we've had a chance to meet. I'm Liam. Chapter 24. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at his hand, bile rising in my throat as fast as a steady scream. Oh my God, no, I thought, taking a step back. No, 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 no. See, you look exactly like a friend of mine, Ruby, but I hadn't seen her in ages, so I'm. His voice trailed off. Okay, was that joke really that bad? I turned around, pressing my face against my towel so he wouldn't see my tears. Ruby? He looped his own towel around my waist and drew me to his side. That was the Liam Stewart way of saying, Hi, darlin', I missed you something fierce. Oh, wow, bad enough to make you cry? He smoothed his hands down over my hair. Okay, that's it. He bent down, and before I could stop him, lifted me over one shoulder. Liam didn't let me wiggle free until we were back at cabin 18. He dropped me on the folded futon that Zoo and I had been sharing, making a quick stop at his bed for a blanket. I'm not cold, I said when he wrapped it around my shoulders. Then why are you shaking? Liam sat down next to me. I turned so my face was resting in the crook of his neck, and I was breathing in his clean, woodsy smell. I'm just pissed at myself, I said when I found my voice. I told Chubbs I'd ask Clancy if I could use his laptop, but I got distracted and forgot. Liam's fingers were busy untangling my wet hair. I don't think he's upset at you. I think he's just upset that I'm keeping us here. It's just reinforcing his fears about not getting home. How do I make it up to him? Well, for one thing, you could ask about the computer, he said, his other hand taking mine. Though I still don't really understand how you're in the position to ask to borrow it. I feel like I haven't seen you in ages. You haven't, I said. You're always on watch. He laughed. It's lonely sitting up in a tree without you. I want to hear all about what you do all night, I said. Have you tried talking to anyone about freeing the camps yet? I brought it up with some of the guys on my watch and Olivia. She's trying to get in to see what Clancy thinks about it. I think I think it's going to be great. I really do. It could work. Clance said that the western gate is the one that used to give them the most trouble, I said, twisting to look up at him. You're being careful, right? Liam went very still beside me, so still he seemed to forget to breathe. Clance, huh? He said in an unnaturally light voice. I guess you are in the position to be asking for favors. What's that supposed to mean? Liam sighed. Nothing, sorry. I didn't mean for that to come out like that. It's great that you guys are friends. I tried to look up at him, but he was looking at the other end of the cabin, where a set of drawers with our things rested against the wall. So he's been giving you lessons. Yeah, I said, wondering how much, if anything, I should hold back. He's been teaching me how to keep others from prying into my head. What about tricks to keep you from slipping into others' heads? Liam asked. Is he helping you with that too? He's trying to, I said. He said that if I strengthened my control over my abilities, that would come naturally. Well, you can always practice that with me, he said, resting his forehead against mine. I felt the trickle start at the back of my mind, the warning before the flood. Clancy had told me that when I felt it coming on, I needed to break all physical contact and imagine a white curtain sweeping between me and whomever I was with. But I didn't want to do either. I felt his lips travel from my forehead, whispering something against my eyelids, my cheeks, my nose. His thumbs stroked the length of my jaw, but even they stilled as I pulled back and turned away from him. "What are you so scared of?" he whispered, his voice laced with hurt. Had this boy really once just been a stranger? Had I really once thought that I'd be able to live a life without him in it? "I don't want to lose you." He made a noise of frustration, his eyes clear and bright as he spoke. "Then why are you the one that keeps letting go?" I never got the chance to answer. A moment later, Hina burst through the cabin door, Zoo in tow, and they told us they were leaving. "Okay, okay, slow down," Liam said. Zoo was darting around the cabin, collecting her things, as Hina's mouth ran a mile a minute. I wasn't sure whom I was supposed to be paying attention to, my friend or the girl she had, apparently, elected to speak for her. Every time Hina opened her mouth, Liam and I reverted back to the same state of shock. Zoo. Leaving. Leaving. I caught her on the way to the drawers, steering her from the food to the futon and forcing her to sit. She must not have picked up on our shock, because her face was bright and glowing. I studied it, the way her smile seemed to crackle with her own brand of electricity, and felt something inside me shrink in defeat. "Us and three others," Hina said breathlessly. I wondered if she had run all the way over from class. "Two blues and a yellow." Kylie finally got permission to leave the camp. Liam twisted around to look at Zoo when he said, "And go? For a hike?" Zoo made her "Are you serious?" face. "Help me out here. Tell me what you want to say." Hina was finally silent, and for a moment, one crazy second really, I thought Zoo was actually going to open her mouth and have it out. Liam's entire body tensed, as if he was expecting the same thing. But Zoo only slipped her notebook back out of her pink duffel and wrote in her neat, looping handwriting. When she flipped it over, she was looking him right in the eye. "I want to go with them to California." I know I should have been happy for her. I should have been celebrating the fact that she was finally able to come out and tell us exactly what she wanted. I just never imagined that she'd want a future without us. "I thought Clancy turned down Kylie's request to leave," I asked Hina. "He did, but she finally wore him down." "What's in California?" Liam asked, leaning against the cabin wall. "My parents have a house there," Hina said, "and they've been waiting for us. The West Coast's government isn't going to turn us back over to the camps." "What about Zoo's parents?" I asked. They, to her credit, Hina knew what I was trying to ask without having to ask it. "My father has not been in speaking terms with my uncle for some time." "Zoo, that's a long trip," Liam began uncertainly. "What if something happens? Who else is going? That Talon kid?" She nodded, and all of a sudden her eyes were on me. I tried to give her an encouraging smile, but I was worried I might burst into tears instead. We all waited as she scribbled out another hasty note and showed it to Liam again. "You don't have to worry about me anymore. Isn't that good?" "I like worrying about you." Liam put a hand on her head. "When would you be leaving?" Hina at least had the decency to look guilty. "We actually have to leave right now. Kylie is worried Clancy might change his mind. He wasn't all that happy." "That's a little fast," I choked out. "Have you really thought about this?" Zoo looked right at me when she nodded. The next note was for the both of us. "I want to be with my family. I just don't want you to be mad at me." "Mad?" Liam shook his head. "Never. Ever. You're my girl, Zoo. We just want you to be safe. They would kill me if anything happened to you." There was a knock at the door. Talon, an older yellow, with his hair woven into intricate dreadlocks, appeared first, followed by a wide-eyed Chubbs. Liam stood. "Good," he said. "I was hoping to talk to you." Talon nodded. "I figured Kylie and Lucy were here too." She stuck her head inside and waved. "Do you want to talk outside?" Liam's hand reached out and touched the small of my back. "Help her pack?" "Are you nuts?" I heard Chubbs say. "You barely know these people." "Excuse me," Hina protested, her hands on her hips. "In case you've forgotten, she's my cousin." "I'll miss you too." Zeus stopped piling her things into her pink suitcase and tore the sheet of paper out for Chubbs to keep. He sat so suddenly that he almost missed the futon. For several moments, he couldn't do anything other than stare at her. I knew the feeling. "Did Kylie say why you guys had to leave tonight?" I asked. sitting beside Chubbs. Zoo only shrugged. I mean, are you guys just going to walk to California? Chubbs said, his voice rising with each word. Do you have some kind of plan? Maybe you'll find a new Betty, I said, but the moment I uttered her name, Zoo stopped packing and shook her head. The next note took some time for her to write. No, there's only one Betty. And apparently she wasn't enough for you, Chubbs said, with a shocking amount of hurt. I guess everything is replaceable, even us. Zoo took a deep breath, walking over to him with her pink bag at her side. He tried to look away, but she was standing right in front of him, wrapping her arms around his neck. All he could do was hug her back, his face hidden in the fabric of her jacket. The camp's bells began to ring, a frenzied sound that didn't cease until it had driven everyone outside. I let Zoo and Hina lead us, pushing a path through the gathered kids. This was the first time their black garb seemed remotely appropriate. Kylie handed a piece of paper to Lee, and he nodded at whatever she was telling him. Lucy was next to them, as tiny and quiet as ever, but she reached up and patted Liam on the shoulder in what I guessed was supposed to be a reassuring way. All happy pretenses were gone. The only way to describe the look on his face was stricken. Borrow a pen? He asked Talon. The boy began to pat down his black cargo pants, searching the pockets until he came up with a blue cap pen. With it in hand, Liam knelt down in front of Zoo and tore off half the sheet of paper Kylie had given him. I wish I could have seen what he had written there, but it wasn't for my eyes. And when he was finished, he folded the paper over several times and pressed it into her palm. The bell fell silent. Everyone's eyes shifted to the right, where Clancy appeared at the head of the path. Hayes towering beside him. His face, which I had grown used to seeing relaxed and proud, was pinched with what was either annoyance or anger. Kylie had decided to go tribal and will be leaving immediately. A murmur of surprised ripples rippled through the crowd. She will only take these four with her, he shouted over the noise. There will be no more requests to leave granted until our numbers are full. Is that understood? Silence. Is that understood? Chubbs jumped beside me at the noises and shouts confirming that, yes, it was. Clancy turned sharply on his heel without another word, heading back to the direction of the office. As soon as he reached the white building, the kids around us seemed to exhale the collective breath they had been holding, turning to each other with confused whispers. That was weird. Why didn't he give them bags, like he usually does? He's worried if our numbers get down too low, there won't be enough people here to protect the camp. My eyes floated up towards the office until they fixed on Zoo waving over at me. No gloves, I thought, watching her hand fall back to her side. Hopefully never again. Do you really have to leave now? I asked. When I reached where she and Liam were standing, the clusters of kids swarmed Kylie and the others, wishing them good luck and offering up blankets and bags of food. Zoo put on a brave smile, wrapping her arms around my waist. Please be safe, I told her. The next note was for me and me alone. When all this is over, will you come find me? There's something I want to tell you, but I don't know how to say it yet. My eyes traced every inch of her face. It was so different from the girl I had only met a few weeks ago. If she had changed this much in so little time, how could I even be sure I'd recognize her years down the line, after the dust of all this hell finally settled? Of course, I whispered, and I'll miss you every day until then. Just before they stepped off the trail and into the untamed forest, Zoo turned and gave me one last wave. Beside her, Hina did the same, and then they were gone. She'll be okay, I said. They'll take care of her. She should be with her family. Her real one. She should be with us. Liam shook his head, his breath catching in his throat. Then maybe we should follow her. Liam and I turned back. Chubbs was trailing behind us, his eyes hidden as the drooping sunlight caught his glasses. You know we can't, Liam said. Not yet. Why not? Chubbs advanced toward us, his voice losing all semblance of calm it held before. Feeling the curious eyes on us, I drew them both off the main path. Why not? Chubbs repeated. Clearly we aren't going to get the help we need to track down our parents or Jack's. It's better for us to just go now, before anyone misses us. We could still catch up with her. And do what? Liam asked. He ran a frustrated hand through his already mused up hair. Wander around until we just so happen to stumble on them, hoping that we don't get our asses caught and thrown back into camp. Chubbs, it's safe here. This 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 is the place we're supposed to be. We can do so much good from here. I saw, maybe even before Liam did, that this was the wrong thing to say. Warning alarms went off in my head at the sight of Chubbs's nostrils flaring and his lips twisting with anger. I knew that whatever was about to leave Chubbs's mouth would not only be sharp but cruel. I get it. I get it, Lee. Okay? Chubbs shook his head. You want to be the big hero again. You want everyone to adore you and believe in you and follow you. Liam tensed. That's not, he began angrily. Well, what about the kids who followed you before? He slapped around the pocket of his trousers before pulling out a familiar folded piece of paper. Chubbs's grip on the letter nearly crushed it. What about Jack? And Brian and Andy and all of them? They all followed you too. But it's easy to forget about them when they're not around, isn't it? Chubbs, I said, stepping between them when Liam advanced, his right fist swinging up. I'd never seen him look so perfectly furious before, a wave of crimson washing up over Liam's throat to his face. Can't you just admit you're doing this to make yourself feel better, not to actually help anyone else? Chubbs demanded. You think, Liam almost couldn't get the words out. You think they're not in my head every goddamn second of every goddamn day? You think I could ever forget something like that? Instead of hitting his friend, Liam hit himself, banging his fist against his forehead until I finally caught his arm. Jesus Christ, Charles, he said, his voice breaking. I just. Chubb stalked past us, only to stop and turn back again. I never believed you, you know, he said, his voice shaking, when you talked about us getting out of camp and getting home safely. That's why I agreed to write my letter. I knew most of us wouldn't make it with you in charge. I stepped forward the same moment Liam did, holding my hands out in front of me to keep him from doing something I knew he would regret. I heard Chubb storm away behind me, heading back in the direction of our cabin. Liam tried to take another step forward, but I pressed back against his chest. Liam was breathing hard, his fists balled at his sides. Let him go, I said. He just needs to blow off steam. Maybe you should think about doing the same. Liam looked like he was about to say something, but instead he let out a frustrated grunt, spun on his heel, and started toward the nearby trees, in the exact opposite direction Chubbs had taken. I leaned back against the trunk of the nearest tree and shut my eyes. My chest was too tight to do anything other than take in shallow, short breaths as I waited. It was nearly dark by the time he emerged, rubbing his face. The skin on both hands was torn and bleeding from smashing them into something solid. His face was drawn in twilight, as if the flush of anger had been ripped out of him and he'd been left with nothing more than gray sadness. I held out an arm to him as he came near, wrapping it around the solid warmth of his waist. His arm settled down over my shoulders and pulled me close, pressing his face against my hair. I took in a deep breath of his comforting smell, wood smoke, grass, and leather. "You didn't mean it," I said, walking him over to the fallen log. He was still shaking and looked unsteady on his feet. Liam didn't sit so much as collapse onto it, falling forward to brace his elbows against his knees. Doesn't make it any less true. We sat for a long time, long enough for the sun to disappear behind the trees and then below the horizon. The silence and stillness between us became unbearable. I lifted my hand and guided it slowly down the length of knobby bones between his shoulder blades. Liam sat up slowly, turning to look at me. "Do you think he's okay?" he whispered. "I think we should probably go check," I said. I don't know how we made it back to the cabin, only that when we arrived, Chubbs was sitting on the porch, silent tears streaming down his face. I could see the apology written there, the wretched guilt, and was surprised to find my heart could break even that bit more. "It's over," he said, as we sat on either side of him. "It's all over." We didn't move for a long time. Chapter 25. It shouldn't have surprised me that Liam threw himself back into watch duty, but it took a genius amount of coaxing from the others for his mind to refocus on the camps. I sat by his side more than once as he and Olivia talked through possible ways of breaking through the camp defenses, offering suggestions here and there as they discussed how to bring up their ideas with Clancy. The thing about enthusiasm, especially Liam's particularly brand, was that it was catching. There would be nights I would simply sit back, watching as he became more and more animated with his hands as he spoke, as if trying to shape his ideas out of the air for the rest of us to see. His words were coated with such unyielding hopefulness that it was visibly inflating everyone around him. By the end of the first week, interest in the project had spiked to such a level that we had to move the meetings out of our small cabin to the fire pit. Now, when Liam went anywhere, it was always with a loyal pack of kids around him, trying to catch his ear. Chubbs and I were less enthusiastic about getting back into the swing of things. He forgave me, maybe because a miserable person can only stand to be alone with their misery for so long. He never went back to work at the garden, but that girl, the bossy one, never ratted him out either. I went back to lessons with Clancy, or at least tried to. Where's your head at today? Not invading his, that was for certain, not even cracking it. Show me what you're thinking about, he said. When I opened my mouth, I don't want to hear about it, I want to see it. I glanced up from the pool of sunlight spilling from his window to the floor. Clancy leveled me with a look of annoyance that I had only seen him wear once, after realizing one of the remaining yellows couldn't zap one of the camp's few washing machines back to life. Never at me, though. I closed my eyes and reached for his hand again. I brought to mind the memory of Zoo's backpack disappearing into the wild thicket of trees. Over the past few weeks, fewer and fewer of our conversations had involved words. When we wanted to get a point across, we shared it our own way, spoke in our own language. But not today. His mind might as well have been encased in concrete, and mine might as well have been encased of jelly. Sorry, I mumbled. I couldn't even muster the strength to feel disappointed. I could feel myself slipping into a strange funk, one in which every little noise or sight outside the window was enough to distract me. I just felt tired, confused. I do have other things I could be doing, he continued, something simmering beneath his words. I have rounds to make and people to talk to, but I'm trying to help you. I'm here with you. At that, my stomach did a strange flop. I sat straight up against his headboard, ready to apologize again, when he rolled off his bed and moved across the room to his desk. Clancy, I really am sorry. By the time I came to stand in front of the desk, he was already typing away at his laptop. He let me stand there in silent, gut-twisting worry for what felt like nearly an hour before he bothered to look up from whatever he was doing. He seemed tired of pretending now, too. Annoyance had taken a sharp turn into anger. You know, I really thought that letting your yellow go would help you focus, but I guess I was wrong. Clancy shook his head. I was wrong about a lot of things, apparently. I bristled, but I'm not sure if it was because of the way he said you're yellow, or the implication that I wasn't capable of mastering the things he was trying to teach me. I needed to leave. If I stayed a second longer, I might say something that would ruin our friendship. I might tell him that Zoo had a name, that of course I'd be worried about her out in the world without me there to protect her. He should have realized that I could have spent the last few weeks spending time with her, but instead I had agreed to work with him, spend time with him, comfort and support him. Maybe I'd learned a lot, and maybe I had a better grip on my abilities, but staring at him, my fists clenched and shaking, I couldn't justify it. What was the point of being holed up with someone who didn't believe in me when I had people out there who did? I turned sharply on my heel and stalked towards the door. I opened it. Clancy called, "That's right, Ruby. Run away again. See how far you get this time." I didn't look back and I didn't stop, though some part of me recognized that this might be it, that I was walking out on one of the only chances I had to learn how to manage my abilities. Sometime in the last 10 minutes, my head had disconnected itself from the stubborn muscle beating in my chest, and honestly, I wasn't sure which was guiding me outside and away from him. But what I did know, with dead absolute certainty, was that I didn't want him to see the way my face crumpled, or for him to glimpse whispers of guilt and sadness circling around inside of my head. I couldn't hide anything from him, but this was the first time I had ever wanted to. It took me a few days to realize that Zoo's leaving wasn't the only event that had shifted the rotation of the Earth. Once Chubb had pointed out East River's similarities to camp life, I couldn't go back. Where I had seen kids in jeans and black t-shirts, I was now seeing uniforms. Where I had seen kids waiting in line for food, I was now seeing the mess hall. When the lights turned out in the cabins at 9 p.m. sharp, and I watched a few members of security teams stroll past our window, I was back in cabin 27, staring at the belly of Sam's mattress. I began to wonder if the supposedly dead security cameras in the office and around facilities were actually on. I did try to see Clancy a few times and apologize, but he always sent me away with a stern, "I don't have time for you today." I got the sense he was punishing me, but I wasn't sure what I had said or done to warrant it. In any case, it quickly became clear that I needed him in my life more than he needed me. That, combined with my stinging pride, made me feel even worse. It was Wednesday, only an hour before Liam and the others were meeting to discuss a new camp liberation strategy before Clancy was finally ready to see me. I'll be back in a little while, I told Liam, squeezing his hand at breakfast. I'll just be a few minutes late. But when I walked into Clancy's office and saw the state of it, I wondered if I should have come at all. Hey, come in. Just watch your step. Yeah, sorry about the mess. Mess? Mess? His office looked like someone had detonated a bomb and unleashed a wild pack of wolves to pick over the salvageable remains. There were piles of papers everywhere, printouts, torn maps, boxes, and then there was Clancy himself, his hair falling into his face, wearing the same rumpled shirt I had seen the day before. In the weeks I had known him, I had never seen Clancy as anything less than impeccable. It was actually a little scary how put together he was. I'm sure some of it had to do with the way he was raised, that even if his father hadn't taught him himself, some crotchety old nanny had waxed poetic on the value of tucking your shirt in, polishing your shoes, and combing your hair. He looked like he was fraying at the edges. Are you okay? I asked, shutting the door behind me. What's going on? We're trying to coordinate a hit for med supplies. Clancy settled down into his chair, but was back on his feet a moment later, when his laptop began to chime. Hang on, just a sec. I towed one of the paper piles on the floor, trying to peek at what was written on it. Those are reports of the usual nightly activities at the nearby truck stop, Clancy said, as if reading my thoughts. His fingers flew over the keyboard. And leak intelligence about PSFs in that area. It seems that Lita Corporation is now employing a government to protect their shipments. Why the PSFs? I asked. Clancy shrugged. They're the largest military force the government has now, and thanks to dear old Dad, the most organized. I guess that makes sense. I leaned back, but staring at the glowing symbol on the laptop lid reminded me of Chubb's. Can I ask you a favor? Only if you let me apologize first. I sat down and steadied my hands. Can we forget it ever happened? No, not this time, he said. Hey, will you look at me? The expression on his face almost made my heart swell twice its usual size. It was dangerous how handsome he was, but today his pained look was absolutely lethal. He does care, a little voice in my head whispered. He cares about you. I'm sorry for losing my temper, he said. I didn't mean for the things I said about your friend Suzume, and I definitely didn't mean to imply to you that I haven't been trying. Then why did you say that? Clancy rubbed a hand over his face. Because I'm an idiot. That's not an answer, I told him, shaking my head. You really hurt me. Ruby, isn't it obvious? He said. I like you. I've only known you for what, a month? And you're probably really the only friend I've had since I've turned 10 and figured out what I was. I'm an idiot for getting so upset that you were focused on someone else when I wanted you to be focused on me. I was almost too stunned to move. I didn't let Suzume and the others go because I thought it would help you focus. I let her go because I thought it would make you happy. I didn't even stop to think that, yeah, of course you'd be worried about her, especially after how hard you worked to protect her. He more than cares about you. I had to look away now, play the situation off. My brain had turned to mush, and my heart wasn't much better. I guess I could forgive you, but only if you do that favor. I could hear the smile in his voice. Sure. What? Well, I know you don't allow it, but I was hoping you'd make an exception in this case, I said, finally looking back at him. My friend. He needs to use your computer to try to contact his parents. Clancy stopped smiling. Your friend Liam? No, Charles Merriweather? The one who's been skipping garden duty? Okay, apparently that girl had ratted him out. Clancy was silent as he shut the laptop and stood. I'm really sorry, Ruby, but I thought I made it clear that no one else could leave. Oh no, I said, forcing a laugh. He just wants to check in with his parents to make sure they're all right. No, Clancy said, moving around so he was sitting on the edge of the desk in front of me. He wants to make arrangements to leave and take you with him. Don't try to cover for him, Ruby. It's the same for everyone. I don't doubt for a second that he's desperate enough to tell his parents the location of this camp. He would never, I said, getting riled up on Chubb's behalf. Really. You were there when we had intruders a few weeks ago. You saw how easily it could be for someone to slip past our defenses. What if they hadn't triggered the alarm? We would have been in serious trouble. Clancy's face was dark, worried. If Charles wants to contact his parents, tell him he needs to fill out a request with instructions on how to do it, just like everyone else. I have to base my decisions on what might threaten the camp's security, no matter how much I want to help you and your friend. It was no good. Chubbs would rather not contact his parents at all than grant a stranger access to his only means of safely communicating with them. Though, Clancy said after a moment, sitting down next to me and kicking his legs up on the desk, there is something that could persuade me. I couldn't look at him. 15 minutes, Ruby. You teach me. What could I possibly know that he didn't? Do you think you could walk me through how you erase someone's memory? I know it's not something you're proud of, and I know it's caused you a lot of pain in the past, but it seems like a useful trick, and I'd be interested to learn it. Well, I guess, I said, like I could deny him after all he's done for me. But it wasn't something I knew how to teach. I barely managed to figure it out for myself. I think understanding how you do it will help me figure out how to prevent you from accidentally doing it again. Sound good? That sounded great, actually. If you let me, he continued, I'd like to walk you through your memories and see if I can find any clues. I just want to confirm a suspicion I have. I don't think he expected the request to give me pause, but it did. He had been in my head multiple times, seeing things I'd never spoken about to anyone, but I had been able to keep him from seeing things that really mattered, the dreams I wanted to protect. I kept thinking about what Liam had said to me before when he told me about his sister. Those memories are mine. But if I want a future with my family, with Liam, then I had to relinquish my control. I had to let Clancy in, and if it meant I could avoid the same thing happening in the future. You can trust him, said the same voice at the back of my mind. He's your friend. He would never overstep. Okay, I said, but only those, and afterwards, Charles gets to use your computer. Deal. Clancy knelt in front of me, hands cupping my jaw, fingers weaving through my hair. I tried not to squirm at his proximity and his assumption that I would be fine with it. We'd sat this close before, but somehow it felt different. Wait, I said, sitting back. I told Liam and the others I'd meet them about something. Can we do this later? Or even tomorrow? It'll only take a second, Clancy promised, his voice soothing and slow. Just close your eyes and think about the morning you woke up on your 10th birthday. Come on, the same voice said. Come on, Ruby. I swallowed hard and did as he asked, imagining myself back in my old room with its blue walls and enormous window. Bit by bit, the room reassembled itself. Blank walls bloomed with cross-stitched samplers. Grams its own pictures of my parents, and a map of DC's metro system. I could see all 6 of the stuffed animals I slept with on the floor next to my bright blue comforter, even things I had completely forgotten. The lamp on my small desk, the way the middle shelf of my bookshelf sagged, suddenly came back into clear focus. Good, Clancy sounded far away, but I felt him near, closer and closer. His breath was warm across my cheek, an unexpected touch. Keep, he sounded breathless. Keep thinking. I saw his face through a glossy haze, his dark eyes burning the shimmering air. I saw only him, because, for those last few passing moments, he was the only thing that seemed to exist in my world. Every part of me felt slow and warm, like honey. Clancy blinked once, then again, as if to clear his own cloudy gaze, to remember he was supposed to be doing. Just keep. Then his lips were so close, smiling against mine. Fingers wove their way through my long hair, thumbs gliding across my cheeks. You, he began, his voice hoarse. You are. At the slightest pressure, something hot and dark sparked there, sending a wave of desire straight to my core. His hand slid down over my neck, my shoulders, down my arms, down, and then there was nothing gentle about it. His lips pressed against mine hard, with enough force to drive them apart, to steal breath and sense and the feel of the bed under me. The skin of his face was smooth and cool against mine, but I was warm. Too warm. The fever that swept over me made my body go limp, and I was pressed back against the bed, sinking into the pillows like I was falling through clouds. The blood had left my head, and all that was there was a low, throbbing pulse. My hands came up to tangle in his shirt. I needed to grasp something, to hang on before I fell too far. Yes, I heard him breathe out, and then his mouth was on mine again, his hands at the hem of my top, edging it over my stomach. You want this, a voice whispered. You want this. But it wasn't my voice. I wasn't saying that, was I? In that instant, a flash of his black eyes gave way to the blue light. That was what I wanted, what I really wanted. My mind felt slow, drugged with the strain of his thought. Liam. But here was Clancy. Clancy who helped me. My friend. Beautiful in a way that made me lose my train of thought. Clancy, who more than liked me, who was also an orange. My eyes flew open, and his hands slipped up to my neck, his fingers tightening slightly around the skin there. I tried to pull back, but it felt like he had flooded my veins with concrete. I couldn't move. I couldn't even shut my eyes. Stop, I tried to say, but when his forehead found mine, the pain that exploded behind my eyes was enough to make me forget everything. Chapter 26. The computer's frantic beeping woke me from a dreamless sleep, tugging at me until my eyes drifted open. I was laying in darkness. My body felt heavy, and though someone had pulled off my sweater, my shirt was plastered to my skin with a thin sheen of sweat. If I had been alone, I might have taken it off, or at least kicked off my jeans to let my body breathe. But I knew better. I was still in his room, and if I was here, then so was he. The light on Clancy's dresser was on, and I could hear the voices of kids below at the fire pit. Night already? It was insane that my blood could run as frigid as winter. At the same time, my heart started to squeeze out a panicked rhythm. The creaking of the old mattress was drowned out by the TV. For a while, I did nothing but listen to President Gray's baritone voice give his nightly address. My legs seemed to be the last part of my body willing to wake up. Assure you that the jobless rate has declined from 30% to 20% in the past year alone. I gave you my word that I would succeed where the false government would not. As much as they would like to believe that they have influence on the world stage, they can barely control their terrorist branch. This so-called Children's League. The TV set turned off with a static hiss. Footsteps. Are you awake? Yes, I whispered. My throat felt sore, my tongue swollen. The bed dipped as Clancy sat down beside me. I tried not to wince. What happened? I asked. The sound of the voices below grew louder, getting trapped between my ears. You passed out, he said. I didn't realize. I shouldn't have pushed so hard. I raised myself up on my elbows in a vain attempt to pull away from his touch. My eyes were fixated on his lips, the white teeth gleaming behind them. Had I imagined it, or had he? My stomach clenched. Did you find anything out? Did it prove your theory? Clancy sat back, his face unreadable. No. I stood again and began to pace between the window and the white curtain. I caught a glimpse of the other side of the room and was unsurprised to find it was awash in the blue light of an open laptop. No, see, I've been going over this again and again in my head, Clancy said. I thought maybe you erased their memories intentionally because you were angry or upset, but you didn't go all out and erase their entire memories. Just you. And again with that girl Samantha Dahl, age 17, from Bethesda, Maryland. Parents Ashley and Todd, green, photographic memory. His voice trailed off. I've been thinking around and around and around in circles, trying to understand how you do this. But walking through your memories doesn't tell me what's going on inside your head. No cause, only effect. I wonder if he even realized he was rambling, or that I had managed to get myself off the bed with my only thought to get the hell out of that room and away from him. The pain came back to me in pieces. What did he do to me? I brought a hand to my forehead. My head ached like all the other times he had been inside it, but this pain was sharper. He hadn't just looked in. He made me want him. Made me want to kiss him. Hadn't he? It's late, I said, interrupting him. I need to go find the others. Clancy turned his back on me. Find Liam Stewart, you mean? Yes, Lee, I said, taking a few slow steps back toward the door. I was supposed to meet him. He's going to be worried. The white curtain caught in my hair as I passed it. Clancy shook his head. What do you even know about him, Ruby? You've known him for what, a month? A month and a half? Why are you wasting your time with him? He's a blue. And not only that, but he has a record. Even before camp. Even before he killed all those kids. 148. Over half of their camp. So you can cut all your bullshit and hero worship because he doesn't deserve it. You're too valuable to be screwing around with him. He whirled around just as my hand touched the door and slammed it shut. What is your problem? I yelled. So what if he's a blue? Aren't you the one that keeps going on and on about how we're all black and how we should respect each other? The smile that curled his lips was arrogant, as it was beautiful. You need to accept the fact that you're orange and you're always going to be alone because of it. A measure of calm had returned to Clancy's voice. His nostrils flared when I tried to turn the door handle again. He slammed both hands against it to keep me from going anywhere, towering over me. I saw what you want, Clancy said, and it's not your parents. It's not even your friends. What you want is to be with him, like you were in the cabin yesterday, or in the car in the woods. I don't want to lose you, you said. Is he really that important? Rage boiled up from my stomach, burning my throat. How dare you? You said you wouldn't. You said. He let out a bark of laughter. God, you're naive. I guess this explains how that League woman was able to trick you into thinking you were something less than a monster. You said you would help me, I whispered. He rolled his eyes. All right, are you ready for the last lesson, Ruby Elizabeth Daly? You are alone, and you always will be. If you weren't so stupid, you would have figured it out by now. But since it's beyond you, let me spell it out. You will never be able to control your abilities. You will never be able to avoid being pulled into someone's head because there's some part of you that doesn't want to know how to control them. No, not when it would mean having to embrace them. You're too immature and weak hearted to use them the way they're meant to be used. You're scared of what that would make you. I looked away. Ruby, don't you get it? You hate what you are, but you were given these abilities for a reason. We both were. It's our right to use them. We have to use them to stay ahead, to keep others in their place. His fingers caught the stretched out collar of my shirt and gave it a tug. Stop it, I said. I was proud of how steady my voice was. As Clancy leaned in, he slipped a hazy image beneath my closed eyes. The two of us just before he walked into my memories. My stomach knotted as I watched my eyes open in terror. His lips pressed against mine. I'm so glad we found each other, he said, voice oddly calm. You can help me. I thought I knew everything. But you? My elbow flew up and clipped him under the chin. Clancy stumbled back with a howl of pain, pressing both his hands to his face. I had half a second to get the hell out, and I took it, twisting the handle of the door so hard the lock popped out on itself. Ruby, wait, I didn't mean. A face appeared at the bottom of the stairs. Lizzie. I saw her lips part in surprise, her mini earrings jangling as I shoved past her. Just an argument, I heard Clancy said, weakly. It's fine, just let her go. I burst outside, completely out of breath. My feet were drawn toward the fire pit, but I forced myself to stop and reconsider. There were so many people still out, gathered around the food tables. I wanted to find Liam and explain why I hadn't been there, to tell him what had happened. But I knew I was a mess. I needed to calm down, and there was no way I could do it here. There were too many potential questions. I needed to be alone. So, of course, when I headed back up the steps, I managed to walk right into Mike. Hey, there you are. His hair was pulled back into a ponytail, a black bandana tied around his head. I could smell gasoline on him from something metallic. Ruby, you okay? I bolted, heading past the office, down the path to the cabins. Eventually, I found what I thought was the path we had walked Zoo out on, but it turned out to be nothing more than an old side trail, overgrown and unforgiving to bare skin. Fine, it would do. There was no one around. That was my only criterion. I walked until I lost sight from the fire pit, clawing at my t-shirt, trying to pull it away from my skin. It smelt like his room, like evergreens and spice and old decaying things. I pulled it over my head and threw it as hard as I could, and still I couldn't shake the smell. It was everywhere, my hands, my jeans, my bra. I should have run straight for the lake, or even the showers. I should have tried to soak his venom out. Calm down, I thought. Calm down. But I couldn't pick apart exactly what was pulsing through me. Anger, for sure, that I had been lied to, that I had fallen for. Disgust, for the way he had touched me and invaded even the pores of my skin. But something else, too, an ache inside of me that expanded and twisted, turning me into stone. Liam was standing right in front of me, and I had never felt so alone. Ruby? His hair was pale silver in this light, curled and tangled in its usual way. I couldn't hide from him. I had never been able to. Mike came and got me, he said, taking his careful step toward me. His hands were out in front of him, as if trying to coax a wild animal into letting him approach. What are you doing out here? What's going on? Please just go, I begged. I need to be alone. He kept coming straight at me. Please, I shouted, go away. It doesn't. I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what's going on, Liam said. He got a better look at me and swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. Where were you this morning? Did something happen? Chubbs told me you'd been gone all day, and now you're out here like this. Did he do something to you? I looked away. Nothing I didn't ask for. Liam's only response was to move back a few paces, giving me space. I don't believe you for a second, he said calmly. Not one damn second. If you want to get rid of me, you're going to have to try harder than that. I don't want you here. He shook his head. Doesn't mean I'm leaving you here alone. You can take all the time you want, as long as you need, but you and me, we're having this out tonight, right now. Liam pulled his black sweater over his head and threw it toward me. Put it on, or you'll catch a cold. I caught it with one hand and pressed it to my chest. It was still warm. He began to pace, his hands on his hips. Is it me? Is it that you can't talk to me about it? Do you want me to go get Chubbs? I couldn't bring myself to answer. Ruby, you're scaring the hell out of me. Good. I balled up his sweater and threw it into the darkness as hard as I could. He blew out a shaky breath, bracing a hand against the nearest tree. Good? What's good about it? I hadn't really understood what Clancy had been trying to tell me that night, not until right then, when Liam looked up and his eyes met mine. The trickle of blood in my ears had turned into a roar. I squeezed my eyes shut, digging the heels of my palms against my forehead. I can't do this anymore, I cried. Why won't you just leave me alone? Because you would never leave me. His feet shuffled through the underbrush, and he took a few steps closer. The air around me heated, taking on a charge I recognized. I gritted my teeth, furious with him for coming so close when he knew I couldn't handle it, when he knew I could hurt him. His hands came up to pull mine away from my face, but I wasn't about to let him be gentle. I shoved him back, throwing my full weight into it. Liam stumbled. Ruby. I pushed him again and again, harder each time, because it was the only way I could tell him what I was desperate to say. I saw Liam I saw bursts of his glossy memory. I saw all of his brilliant dreams. It wasn't until I knocked his back into a tree that I realized I was crying. Up this close, I saw a new cut under his left eye and the bruise forming around it. Liam's lips parted. His hands were no longer out in front of him, but hovering over my hips. Ruby. I closed what little distance was left between us, one hand sliding through his soft hair, the other gathering the back of his shirt into my fist. When my lips finally pressed against his, I felt something coil deep inside me. There was nothing outside of him, not even the grating of cicadas, not even the gray-bodied trees. My heart thundered in my chest. More, more, more. A steady beat. His body relaxed under my hands, shuddering at my touch. Breathing him in wasn't enough. I wanted to inhale him. The leather, the smoke, the sweetness. I felt his fingers counting up my bare ribs. Liam shuffled his legs around mine to draw me closer. I was off balance on my toes, the world swaying dangerously under me as his lips traveled to my cheek, to my jaw, to where my pulse throbs in my neck. He seemed so sure of himself, like he had already plotted out this course. I didn't feel it happening, the slip. Even if it had, I was so wrapped up in him that I couldn't imagine pulling back or letting go of his warm skin or that moment. His touch was feather light, stroking my skin with a kind of reverence. But the instant his lips found mine again, a single thought was enough to rocket me out of the honey-sweet haze. The memory of Clancy's face as he had leaned in to do exactly what Liam was doing now flooded my mind, twisting its way through me until I couldn't ignore it, until I was seeing it play out, glossy and burning, like it was someone else's memory, not mine. And then I realized I wasn't the only one seeing it. Liam was seeing it too. How? How? That wasn't even possible, was it? Memories flowed to me, not from me. But I felt him grow still, then pull back, and I knew by the look on his face that he had seen it. Air filled my chest. Oh my God, I'm sorry, I didn't want. He. Liam caught one of my wrists, and he pulled me back to him, his hands cupping my cheeks. I wondered which one of us was breathing harder as he brushed my hair from my face. I tried to squirm away, ashamed of what he'd seen, and afraid of what he'd think of me. When Liam spoke, it was in a measured, would-be calm voice. What did he do? Nothing. Don't lie, he begged. Please don't lie to me. I felt it. My whole body. God, it was like being turned to stone. You were scared. I felt it. You were scared. His hands came up and wove through my hair, bringing my face close to his again. I started. He asked me to see a memory, and I let him. But when I tried to move away, I couldn't get out. I couldn't move. And then I blacked out. I don't know what he did, but it hurt. It hurt so much. Liam pulled back and pressed his lips to my forehead. I felt the muscles of his arms strain and shake. Go to the cabin. He didn't let me protest. Start packing. Lee, I'm going to find Chubbs, he said, and the three of us are getting the hell out of here tonight. We can't, I said. You know we can't. But he was already crashing back through the dark path. Lee. I went back to find his sweater and pulled it on, but not even that could keep away the chill as I followed him out of the woods, back in the direction of the cabin and fire pit. When I got to the cabin, Chubbs was already there, propped up on his bed, reading. He took one look at me and snapped his book shut. What in the world happened? We're leaving, I told him. Get your things. What are you staring at? Move. He jumped down off the bed. Are you okay? He asked. What's going on? I had only just finished telling him everything that had happened with Clancy when Liam came bursting through the door. He took one look at the two of us together and let out a shaky breath. I got worried when I couldn't find you, he told Chubbs. Are you ready? I pulled on a baggy t-shirt and took Liam's jacket when he threw it at me. Chubbs tied up his shoes, snapped his suitcase shut, and didn't put in a word of protest as we switched off the cabin lights and headed out into the darkness. The smell of smoke from the fire pit followed us through the main trail longer than the light or the voices from it. I caught Chubbs looking back toward it over his shoulder, just once, the distant orange glow reflected in the lenses of his glasses. I knew he wanted to ask what we would do next, but Liam hushed us both and started down a side trail that I had never seen before. It was well worn, but narrow enough that we had to walk single file. I kept my eyes on Liam's shoulders until he reached back to take my hand. The trail grew darker the farther we walked into the thick layers of the young trees. And then we were out, and there was light, so much of it, and for that moment I had to hold up a hand to cover my eyes. I felt Liam tense and stop, his hand tightening around mine until it hurt. Told you, I heard Hayes said. Told you he'd try to get out this way. Yes, good call. Damn, I heard Chubb swear behind me, but I was too shocked to do anything other than step out from behind Liam and see where Clancy, Hayes, and the cluster of boys from the watch stood blocking our only way out. Chapter 27. There was a single moment when no one moved at all. I recognized where we were now that the area was lit up with flashlights and lanterns. I had seen it once before, on Clancy's computer screen. This is where, days before the skip tracers had tried to slip through the camp's wire fences, and Hayes had taken care of them, much like how he seemed poised to take care of us now. The boys in front of us stood where the paths met the silver wire marking East River's boundaries. Clancy was at the center, looking infinitely more pulled together than he had a few short hours ago. I think we need to have a talk, Clancy said, his voice pleasant. It seems something dangerous is about to happen. We're heading out, Liam said, the anger in his voice barely contained, and we don't want trouble. You can't just go. Hayes pushed his way to the front of the group, looming at Clancy's side like a cannon waiting to be aimed. We have a system here, and you haven't earned your keep yet. The words had just left his mouth when we heard the sound of footsteps and voices crashing through the dried brush of the other bigger trail behind them. Olivia appeared first, followed by Mike and four of the other kids Liam had been working alongside this past month. They reacted the same way we had, first cringing away from the light, then stopping short in shock. What's going on? Olivia demanded, cutting around the line of kids in black until she was standing right in front of Clancy. Why didn't you radio me? Hayes and I have it under control. Clancy crossed his arms over his chest. You should head back to your posts. Not until you tell me what's happening. She whirled around to face us, taking in our bags. Are you leaving? Lee, Mike said, making the connection at the same time. What are you doing? It seems that Liam's store is staging another breakout, Clancy said, or at least was attempting to. Looks like it'll be just as successful as the last. Go to hell, I cut in, grabbing Liam's arm before he could have a go at Clancy. He was shaking with anger, but we were outnumbered. Didn't he see that? Ruby, Clancy said quietly, with all the familiarity of the kid I had thought was my friend. Come on, can we at least talk things through? Yes, a voice whispered in my ear. Wouldn't that be for the best? The tightly wound anger in my chest began to unravel, slowly at first, then in a strange cool rush. My fingers slid from Liam's. All of a sudden, it did seem like talking was the best option, the only option. I had been so angry and afraid before, but this is Clancy. It was Clancy. I took a step toward him, toward that smile. I could forgive him. Couldn't I? It would be so easy. Everything with Clancy was easier. My feet moved on their own, knowing exactly where I needed to go, where I was supposed to go. But Liam didn't let me, and Chubbs wasn't about to either. I felt the latter's hand grab my backpack the moment Liam stepped back in front of me. Clancy disappeared from sight, and I couldn't remember why it had felt so important to go to him, to let him walk me back to camp. Stop it, Liam yelled. Whatever you're doing to her, stop it. He's not, Mike began, then looking between Liam and Olivia. I saw her just beyond Liam's shoulders, her face a grim mask. Behind them, the other kids from Liam's watch detail were abuzz, unsure where to look. I'm not doing anything, Clancy said, his voice taking an edge of ice. You're the one that's jealous of the relationship she and I have. The boys around him began to nod in agreement, their faces strangely expressionless. You're the one that's trying to break the rules here, he continued. Because it is a rule, isn't it, Liv? If you want to leave, you have to ask me, right? She hesitated, but nodded. Liam's arm dropped in front of me slowly. His brows drew together, and he seemed to incline his head toward Clancy, as if listening to something the rest of us couldn't hear. I felt, rather than saw, the tension leave the lines of his shoulders. He took a step back, and then another away from me, one hand going to his forehead. Sorry, I didn't mean. You're happy here, aren't you? Clancy asked pleasantly. There's no reason why we can't go back to feeling that way. There are rules here, you know them now, and you won't break them again, will you? No, Liam said, his voice hoarse. He was staring at me, but his eyes had taken on a milky quality that I recognized at once. And so, apparently, did Chubb's. His own eyes narrowed, zeroing in on Clancy with pure razor-sharp fury. Let me tell you what I think about your fucking rules, he said, his voice dripping with venom as he pushed past Liam. You sit up in your room and you pretend like you want to do what's best for everyone, but you don't do any of the work yourself. I can't tell if you're just a spoiled little shit or if you're worried about getting your pretty princess hands dirty, but it sucks. You are fucking awful, and you sure as hell don't have me fooled. The full force of Clancy's cold gaze fell on Chubbs, but he went on, undaunted. You talk about being equals, like we're one big happy rainbow and peace and all that shit, but you never once believed that yourself, did you? You won't let anyone contact their parents, and you don't care what happens to the kids who are still trapped in camps your father set up. You wouldn't even listen when the watch kids brought it up. So what I want to know is, why can't we leave? He took another step forward, cutting off Clancy before he could start speaking. What's the point of this place, other than for you to get off on how great you are and toy with people and their feelings? I know what you did to Ruby. The others stood by in silence, but the longer Chubb spoke, the clearer their eyes became. Mike in particular shook off Clancy's influence with a look like he was about to be sick. The other kid's eyes flickered around, nervous and unsure. Clancy had been perfectly still the entire time Chubbs had torn into him, but now that Chubbs was finished, Clancy leaned in close as if he were about to whisper a secret to him. Only when he spoke, his voice was loud enough for us all to hear. I toyed with more than her feelings. His eyes flicked to Liam's face. Didn't I, Stuart? The sweep of furious crimson that washed over Liam's throat to his face was enough to tell me exactly what kind of image Clancy had pushed into his head. Don't! I screamed, but it was too late for that. What happened next passed so fast that half of the people gathered there must have missed it. Liam raised his fist, ready to launch it in Clancy's smug face, but his hand got no further than his shoulder. Every part of him, every muscle, every joint, every sinew, went bored straight, like he had received a great electric jolt. He froze, and a breath later he was on the ground, and Hayes's fists were slamming into his face. Stop, I begged, ripping free of Chubbs's grip. I knew what Clancy had done to him, and why he couldn't even raise a hand to protect his face. I saw the spray of blood hit the dirt, and it was more than I could take. It was more than any of us could take. Clance, I heard Olivia say, that's enough. You made your point. Hayes, you'll kill him. Again and again and again, on whatever surface of skin he could find, Hayes drove his fist into Liam like he could pound his fury into him. The blows didn't stop until Clancy put a hand on his shoulder, and even then Hayes made sure to get one last punch across his face. He heaved Liam up by the front of his shirt, and when Clancy nodded to him, Hayes slammed Liam back down to the ground and stood up, leaving him a limp mess of raw skin face down in the dirt. The moment the two of them were out of sight, Chubbs and I both lurched forward, pushing through the circle of kids that closed around Liam. We got maybe 2 steps before Mike blocked us from going further. Don't, he said. You'll only make it worse. What are they going to do to him? Chubbs asked. Go back to your cabin, he told us. We'll take care of him. No, I said. We're not leaving him. Mike rounded on me. I don't know what the hell you said to him or made him think, but Lee was happy here. This is exactly what he needed, and you've screwed him over, so don't you dare, Chubbs snapped. Don't you dare blame her for this. Your head is so up the slip kid's ass you can't even see anything that's going on around you. Mike bared his teeth. We all put up with you at Caledonia because Liam asked us to, but I don't have to do that here. Whatever, Chubb said. Do you think I care about that? The only thing I care about is what's going to happen to Liam. You know, the one that put everything on the line to get us here in the first place. His words had the desired effect. Mike paled in the darkness. You can have your stupid slip kid, but don't expect us to let you keep Lee. We threw ourselves forward again, trying to claw our way through to reach him. A pair of arms wrapped around my chest, another around my legs, and it didn't matter how hard or how loud we were screaming. The kids dragged us away from Liam all the same. Chubbs and I sat on Liam's bunk, not speaking, not moving, not doing anything but watching the cabin door. Through the windows we saw furious faces, gawkers and guards alike, all trying to figure out exactly what had happened. Lights out had come and gone, but it wasn't like either of us were going to be able to sleep. Judging by the two figures in black standing directly in front of our door, it didn't seem like we'd be able to leave either. Not after our failed attempt, and certainly not after Chubbs had rained down a verbal hailstorm on Clancy. Where did you learn to talk like that? I finally asked, but he only shrugged. I tried to imagine what Lee would have said and went from there. Chubbs rubbed the top of his head. Did I really say he had pretty princess hands? I let out a strangled laugh. All that and more. The seconds ticked by at half the speed of my thoughts. Why weren't you affected? I wondered aloud. He did try it on you, didn't he? He tried. I definitely felt it. Little did he know. Chubbs tapped his forehead. Steel trap. Nothing gets out or in. I had a fleeting thought that what he was saying could very well be true, that it might even explain why his was the only head I had managed to avoid slipping into. But we heard loud shuffling steps on the path, and everything else flew straight out of my head. Olivia and another kid came stumbling in, one of Liam's arms over each of their shoulders. His face was turned down, and I could see where mud had caked into his hair. The rain had started about an hour after we had left him. Lee, Chubbs was saying, trying to get him to rouse. Lee, can you hear me? We helped him lay out on the futon. It was dark enough in the room that I couldn't see the extent of the beating until Olivia set a flashlight lantern down on the floor beside him. Oh my God, I said. Liam turned in my direction, and for the first time, I realized he was actually awake. His eyes were swollen shut. I let my hand fall on the arm hanging off the side of the futon and moved it so that it was across his chest. The breath escaped his lips in a wheezing sigh. There was a thick layer of gummy dried blood caked around his nose, his mouth, down to even his chin. Daylight would reveal the rest of the bruises. He needs antiseptic, Chubbs said. Bandages, something. If you two come with me, Olivia replied, I'll walk you to the supply room. No one will be out to bother us. I'm not going to leave him, I said, still crouching beside Liam on my knees. It's all right. I barely felt Chubbs' hand on my shoulder as he brushed by. The screen door creaked open and shut behind us. I waited until I heard shuffling footsteps of the other kid follow them out before I looked back down at Liam's face. I moved my fingers, feather light, across his face as gently as I could. When I came to his nose, he let out a sharp hiss, but he didn't try to twist away until I brushed his swollen split lip. I didn't know if I had ever cried as much as I had in the past month. I had never been like the other girls in my cabin at Thurmond, who cried every night, and then again every morning when they realized their nightmare had been real. I wasn't even a crier as a kid, but there was no way to hold them back now. Do I look as pretty as I feel? His words were slurred. I tried to get him to open his mouth to make sure all his teeth were still there, but his jaw was too tender for me to touch it. I leaned forward to press my lips against where my hands had been. Don't, he said, one eye just barely cracked open. Not unless you mean it. You shouldn't have gone after him. Had to, he managed to mumble out. I'll kill him, I said. Anger flared up inside me. I'll kill him. Liam started to chuckle again. Ah, there she is. There's Ruby. I'll get you out of here, I promised. You and Chubbs. I'll talk to Clancy. No, he said. Stop. It'll make things worse. How could things possibly get any worse? I asked. I messed everything up for you. I ruined everything. God, he shook his head, mouth twisting into a shadow of a smile. Did you know? You make me so happy that sometimes I actually forget to breathe. I'll be looking at you, and my chest will get so tight, and it's like the only thought in my head is how much I want to reach over and kiss you. He blew out a shaky breath. So don't talk about getting me out of here, because I'm not leaving, not unless you're part of the package, too. I can't go with you, I said. I won't put you in that kind of danger. Bull, he said. Nothing's going to be worse than being apart. You don't understand. Then make me, Liam said. Ruby, give me one reason why we can't be together, and I'll give you 100 reasons why we can't. We can go anywhere you want. I'm not your parents. I'm not going to abandon you or send you away. Not ever. They didn't abandon me. What happened to them was my fault. The secret had slipped out of me like a long exhale, and I'm not sure which of us was more surprised by my admission. Liam settled into silence, waiting for me to continue. It occurred to me then that this was it. This was really the moment that I was going to lose him, and all I could think about was how much I wished I had kissed him one last time before he started fearing me for what I was. I leaned my head down on the cushion beside his. In a whisper, because I wasn't brave enough to say it any louder, I told him about going to bed the night before my 10th birthday, and how I woke up expecting my usual birthday pancakes, about the way they locked me in the garage like some wild animal, and when the story was over, I told him about Sam, how I had been her Chubbs until I was nothing at all. My throat burned when I finished. Liam turned his face toward mine. We weren't even a breath apart. Never, he said after a while. Never, never, never. I am never going to forget you. You won't have a choice, I said. Clancy said I won't be able to control it. Well, I think he's full of it, Liam said. Listen, what I saw in the woods when I kissed you, right, that really happened, didn't it? What that asshole did, that happened to you. He kept you there, frozen, like he did to me. Yes, but also no, because a small part of me had wanted Clancy to do it. Or had he only made me want him? Played my emotions with a single touch. I nodded, finally. My insides were squirming with revulsion at the memory of his skin against mine. Come here, Liam said softly. I felt his fingers' light touch run along the crown of my head, feather soft as they came down to cut my cheek. When I lifted my face, he met me halfway and kissed me. I was careful not to touch his face, only his shoulder and arm. When he pulled back, I seemed to follow, my lips searching for his. You want to be with me, right? He whispered. Then be with me. We'll figure it out. If nothing else, I trust you. You can look inside my head, and that's all you'll see. His warm breath spread over my cheek like another kiss. Mike worked it out. He's going to try to find a way to sneak us out. And then you, me, and Chubbs, we're going to hit the road. We're going to find Jack's father, and we're going to find a way for Chubbs to reach his parents. And then we're going to talk about what we want to do. I leaned over and pressed a kiss to his forehead. You really don't hate me, I breathed out. You're not scared? Not even a little? His battered face twisted with what I thought was supposed to be a smile. I'm scared to death of you, but for a completely different reason. I'm a monster, you know. I'm one of the dangerous ones. No, you aren't, he promised. You're one of us. Chapter 28. Chubbs returned a few minutes after Liam faded into a restless sleep. He stirred again and when we began cleaning the cuts and gouges on his face, reaching for my hand at the first touch of the stinging anesthetic. When I felt his grip began to relax, I saw his eyelids flutter shut again. I finally released the breath I had been holding. He'll live, Chubb said, seeing my expression. He was suffering the same way. He was stuffing away the rest of the supplies in my backpack. He'll have a wicked headache in the morning, but he'll live. We took turns sleeping, or at least pretending to. My body was thrumming with anxious, unspent energy, and I could hear Chubbs muttering to himself as if trying to work through the night's events. And then came the sound of slapping feet against the concrete steps of the cabin. Once more, we gave up pretending altogether. Lizzie, I heard one of the boys outside our door say, are you? She pushed past them, throwing the screen door open so hard it slammed against the wall. Liam startled awake, more confused and disoriented than he had been before. Ruby! Lizzie looked right at me, her face ashen, her hair caught in her dozen piercings, but it was the blood on her hands that stopped the flow of blood to my head. It's Clancy, she gasped, clutching her arms. He just fell and started shaking all over like crazy and bleeding, and I didn't know what to do. But he told me to get you because you'd know what's going on. And Ruby, please, please help me. I stared at her hands, the wet blood. It's a trick, Liam croaked from the futon. Ruby, don't you dare. If he's really hurt, I should go, Chubbs told Lizzie. Ruby, she cried, like she couldn't believe I was standing there. There's so much blood. Ruby, please, please, you have to help him. He really thought I was stupid, didn't he? Or did he think his influence extended that far, that I could ever forget what he had done to Liam and go rushing to his side? I shook my head, anger rippling over my skin. Too immature and weak-hearted to use my abilities, was I? We'd see about that. Liam pushed himself up into a sitting position. You know him, he was saying. Don't do it. Don't. Show me where it is, I said, over Chubbs's protest. I turned to him. You have to stay with Liam, understand? You have to watch him because I can't. I'll take care of everything. I would get us out, not Mike, not a burst of random luck. I would get us out. And seeing Clancy's face slack with my influence would be well worth the effort it would take to break into his mind. Hadn't he taught me everything I needed to know to do it? Ruby, I heard Liam say, but I took Lizzie's arm and guided her outside, past the confused kids, past the cabins. Outside, the temperature had dropped almost 20 degrees. Fat tears dropped down her chin. He's in storage. We were talking about. It's okay, I told her, putting an awkward hand on her back. We ran through the garden and up the office's back steps. She fumbled to put her key in the lock, only to have it jam. I'd have to kick it in. Lizzie was too far gone to do anything but sprint inside. The hall and kitchen were empty. The whole building smelled like garlic and tomato sauce. Everyone must have been setting out for dinner. Everyone except Clancy, who stood in the middle of the storage room, leaning against a shelf of macaroni boxes. Lizzie ran to the back right corner of the room and dropped to her knees. She pawed at the ground, her trembling hands clutching only air. Clancy, she cried. Clancy, can you hear me? Ruby is here now. Ruby, come here. My stomach turned violently, and I was surprised how sad it made me feel to have my worst suspicions confirmed. Why does it have to be like this? I thought, looking at him. Why? You came. You really came, Clancy said in a bored, flat voice. He sounded like he was reciting the words from a script. Thank you, Ruby. I appreciate your help in my time of need. Why are you just standing there? Lizzie wailed. Help him. You're sick, I said, shaking my head. Clancy came toward me, but I moved to the opposite end of the room, where Lizzie had her face buried in the ground. Stop it. I'm here. There's no reason to keep torturing her. I'm not torturing her, Clancy said. I'm just playing around. And then, as if to prove his point, he barked, Liz, shut up. She stopped mid-gasp. A trickle of blood escaped her lips from where she had bitten it. I took her hands, turning them over. The blood was coming from her, two neat cuts across her palms. What do you even want? I asked, whirling around. I told you everything, and what I didn't say, you went ahead and saw. It wasn't only then that I noticed what Clancy was wearing. Nice, pressed black slacks with a white button-down shirt without so much of a speck of dust on it, and a red tie trailing down over his stomach in the same exact way the blood was dripping down Lizzie's chin. I'm just trying to keep you here for a little while, he said. Then we can go. And where exactly are we going? My eyes fixed on the shelf behind his head, the one full of metal spoons and mixing bowls. Anywhere you want, he said. Isn't that what the blue promised you? I tried to stay calm, but the way he spat the words out, blue, rankled my already frayed nerves. I don't know if Lizzie sensed the sharp change in my mood, but Clancy did. He was smiling, that perfect gray smile, the same one that had followed me across Thurman's grounds. Good, I thought. Let him think I'm helpless. Let him think that there was no real threat from me, not until he was flat down on the ground, unable to even remember his own name. Do you have a better offer? I asked. What if I did? I'd find that hard to believe, I said. I inched closer, trying to distract him. Considering you care so little about me, if this situation had been reversed, you wouldn't have come running, would you have? He shrugged. I would have come. I just would have walked. Please let Lizzie go, I said. It scared me the way she was acting, like a little kid. What was it about being an orange that turned people into such monsters? Why? If she stays, you won't think about trying anything because it might mean her getting hurt or worse. He said it so casually that I actually thought he was kidding. How can you be sure? I hope my voice sounded stronger than I felt in my throat. I don't know her that well. I've seen your memories. You're what shrinks call overly empathetic. You won't do anything if that means hurting others, not intentionally at least. He said it with the utmost confidence, which made me shock which made the shock in his face when I lunged at him that much sweeter. For once he hadn't predicted my response, hadn't pulled me under his sway. I lashed across his face, hard, heard him grunt as my nails bit into his cheek. The connection was instant and powerful. It seemed that some part of what he had said was true after all. I needed to want to use my abilities. I had to want to have control over them. And God, did I want to. I wanted to tear his brain to shreds. The images that churned up from the dark waters of his head were so unlike what I had seen before. Instead of the bright glare and the sharp controlled edges, they were sketched in a kind of watery charcoal, unfocused, fuzzy. I saw the faces, bloated and distorted, rise up from the murky surface. His mind had gone limp, and I felt like I could reach both hands up and reshape him. Let her go, I said, my grip on his throat tightening. I threw the image of him sending Lizzie away, and a moment later he was mumbling the words, Lizzie, go outside. She bolted for the door, and I felt a thrill run through me. He was shaking under my hands, his eyes blinking, but I held on to him. Now, I said, you're going to let us go too. But even as the words left my mouth, I felt the unraveling. I gripped harder, my fingers digging into his skin. Not yet, I begged, not yet. I need to. As quickly as I had slipped in, I was thrown out, and that damn white curtain swept behind us. I tried to throw myself at it again, but Clancy's hand lashed out to snatch my wrist, and I felt every muscle in my body thicken to stone. Nice try. Clancy let me fall to the ground like a board, and actually stepped over me to examine his scratched cheek in the pot's reflective surface. Didn't even draw blood. I couldn't even move my jaw to tell him off. Good to see my lessons were of some benefit to you, Clancy snarled, raking a hand through his disheveled hair. He turned back to face the shelves, hiding his face, but I saw his hands clench at his side, bunching up the fabric of his pants. I hadn't ruined him, but I had rattled him. I like to see my students apply themselves, but don't mistake a few weeks of practice for years of it. I focused on trying to untangle whatever mental block he had thrown at me. I started with my toes, imagining them moving one by one, and nothing. Maybe I could erase memories, but he could turn people into living stone. The first scream came only a second after I heard the first whirring of engines. An unnatural wind stirred up in the trees outside. Their branches scratched against the side of the building. Instant. As if to get our attention, I saw Clancy cringe at the high-pitched shriek of sirens, too. His face was lit with eagerness, and that's what frightened me most of all. That's it, he said, then, brushing his jacket off. They're finally here. I couldn't squeeze my eyes shut. The air was burning them, and then the air itself was burning. The telltale smell of smoke filtered through the open windows. Gunfire. More screaming, more struggling. Then I imagined myself moving, on my feet and running for the door. To the others. To safety. But I got no further than a blink. But that was something. I could work with that. You're okay, Clancy told me as he sat down next to me. One of his feet began to tap out the rhythm against the stool. I won't let anything happen to you. The blood roared in my ears. The kind of yelling that was coming from outside didn't sound human, more like live animals having their skin torn clear off. It sounded like pain and terror and desperation. The pitch of the metallic whine coming through the walls increasing with intensity as each minute ticked on. Rabbits need dignity and above all the will to accept their fate. I felt, rather than heard, the footsteps thundering down the hall. I couldn't tell how many there were. They were all moving in perfect time. The storage room burst open with an explosion of smoke and heat. I had never felt so grateful for anything in my life as I was looking at his face when the PSFs barged in. The anticipation there gave way to blank incomprehension, then to pure, unadulterated rage. Whatever Clancy had been expecting, it wasn't two PSI Special Forces soldiers. He hadn't even had to touch them. Shut up, Clancy hissed, throwing a hand out in their direction. Get out, and tell your superior that no one was in here. The man in front, his body hidden under a layer of fabric and body armor, held a gloved hand against the device in his ear and said in a monotone voice, Building clear. The signal he gave to the other two was simple, a mechanical wave. As they jogged out of the room, I realized they were the ones that had been letting off the smoke, and the fires had started with them. Damn it, God damn it. Clancy was shaking his head. A fist flew out and smashed into a nearby shelf, its impact drowned out by the rattling of gunfire outside. Where are my reds? Why didn't he send them? He brought a bruised knuckle to his lips and began to suck on it, pacing the short length of the room. His breath came out in short bursts and seemed to reflect the rapid turning of his thoughts. My reds. His. The way he spoke about them left no doubt in my mind what implication was there. Project Jamboree. His father's program. No, I thought. Not his father's. I could see the different shards of the fractured full picture in front of me now. When he had first explained the program, I hadn't known him all that well, or seen what he was capable of doing. Not enough to piece together the clues he had unintentionally left for me to uncover. There really wasn't a single person in the world that was immune to his abilities, not even President Gray. Clancy was still stalking across the room like a caged panther, the muscles of his back rippling with each spray of gunfire. Then he stopped, looking up at the windows and the smoke that was swirling against him. Who told you, you bastard? He said, in a low enough voice that I wasn't sure he knew he was speaking aloud. Which one of them broke my influence and figured it out? I was so careful, so goddamn careful. He turned on his heel and stalked back toward me, and I saw the truth of it all written on his face. The same hand that bled with the newly split skin had been the same one to coax his father, his advisors, anyone and everyone it took, to consider Project Jamboree. Hadn't he said that before his father realized he was controlling him, Clancy had some hand in making sure the program ran smoothly and that the kids were treated well? He clearly couldn't have done more than that. He clearly could have done more than that. If he had all of East River under his sway, what's to say he couldn't have controlled a small army of Reds, too? Clancy must have seen the realization in my eyes, because he let out a low, humorless laugh. I forget sometimes, that he's not stupid. Even after he finally figured out that I was manipulating him, he never put it together that Project Jamboree came from me. I made sure of it after I escaped. I even left East River to check on them from time to time, to make sure my influence was still there. I timed the leak of East River's location perfectly with the end of their training program. One hand came up to a fist in his hair, and there was something breaking in his voice when he spoke again. I grew up idolizing him, but when I saw what he really was, what he could do with his own son, his words choked off slightly. Who was it? Who tipped him off? How would he have known to send the PSFs instead? I should be controlling my Reds right now, and we should all be marching up towards New York to take him down. Clancy bent suddenly, grabbing the front of my shirt and hauling me up from the floor. He shook me, hard enough that I almost bit my tongue clean off, but he didn't say a single word. The bullets and screams outside didn't touch his stony features or his thoughts. The smoke began to crawl along the floors, rolling heavy, seizing everything in its path. With no warning, Clancy's hand released my shirt and glided up my shoulders in a lover's caress. His fingers closed around my neck, and I was so sure, so damn sure, that he was either going to kiss me in rage or kill me. More footsteps, lighter than before, but no less urgent. Clancy looked up, annoyance creasing his forehead. I didn't see what happened next, only the aftermath. Clancy went flying back into the shelves, hard enough that there was an audible crack of his head connecting with the back wall. His body tore down the shelves of pasta and flour, landing in a messy pile on the floor. Chubb's upside-down face appeared over mine. His glasses were scratched and bent, and his face and shirt were stained with soot. But he didn't look like he was hurt. Ruby, Ruby, can you hear me? We need to run. Why did he sound so calm? Gunfire roared in my ears, an endless stream of tiny pops and explosions. Can you move? I was still too stiff to do anything other than shake my head. Chubbs gritted his teeth and slipped his arms around me, making sure I had a good hold. Hold on, I'm going to get us out of here. Move when you can. Outside the safety of the office, there was no escaping the noises. My heart lurched to life, pounding against my rib cage. Tear gas and smoke coated the air in thick layers. Everywhere there was fire. On the ground, climbing the trees, dropping onto cabin roofs. My face and chest felt like they had caught it too. The wind blew the fire so close to us that Chubbs had to pat my jeans down so I wouldn't go up in flames. He grunted, and I knew he was struggling to keep us going under my weight. I wanted to tell him to drop me, to take the letters in Liam's jacket and run. Liam, where's Liam? Through the swirling ash, I saw the lines of black uniforms marching the kids from camp down the path to the cabins. I saw a girl thrown out of her cabin and into the dirt, only to be yanked up by her hair. Two kids I recognized from the camp security detail raised their guns at the PSFs, who blew them away in a cloud of fire. Stop where you are! The air was knocked from my chest as Chubbs dropped me to throw the same soldier up into a tree. When his arms circled my chest again, we were moving faster than before. And then we were falling, tumbling down the hill. Chubbs let out a surprised croak as we rolled, picking up brush and embers along the way. The back of my hand smacked against a tree, and I couldn't see where we were going. The smoke blinded me. I came to a slow stop at the base of the hill, sinking face first in the muddy bank. My hands and legs all convulsed as the feeling began to return to them. I felt his hands on the back of my jacket. Chubbs dragged me back, choking and coughing. We are going to die. We're going to die. We are going to die. Rabbits need to accept their fate. Rabbits need dignity, and above all, the will to accept their fate, their fate, their fate. The water was freezing and swallowed me whole. Shock cut straight through my limbs, waking them up with a slap. I struggled against the water, flapping my arms to break to the surface. The orange-stained sky was waiting as it broke into the night, coughing up water and poisoned air. Chubbs found me again. One hand clung to the wood pit post. The other reached out for me. The dock, I thought. Our dock. I kicked towards him and let Chubbs draw me under the cover of the old wood. The helicopter flying overhead beat the lake into a frenzy of waves and patterns. I could barely keep my head above the cold water, but I was alert enough to see the searchlights from above dancing over the lake's surface. I kept one arm around Chubbs' shoulders and used my free hand to reach up and grab hold of the dock's algae slick supports. He did the same, waiting until the sounds of boots and guns had cleared from overhead before whispering, "Oh my God." I moved my arm to draw us closer together and hugged him as hard as my muscles could. We didn't dare speak, but I felt him shake his head. He knew what I was trying to say. I knew what he wanted to ask. Neither of us could find the words to choke out amid the smoke and the screams. Chapter 29. My legs were half frozen when we were finally brave enough to move. It had been silent for some time, since the sun began to warm the sky. The helicopters disappeared first, then the sound of gunfire. Between the two of us, there was only breathing and whispered fears about what had happened to the others, to Liam. I don't know, he said. We split up. He could be anywhere. I wanted to get us out of the water 2 hours before, but we kept hearing the sound of falling trees and crackling remnants of the terrible firestorm. My muscles were so stiff that it took me 3 times as long to pull myself out of the water and onto the dock than it normally would have. Chubbs collapsed beside me, shaking with each cold breeze that slashed over our wet clothes. We crawled our way back up the path and stayed low to the ground until we were sure, positive beyond measure, that we were the last ones left. Most of the cabins were gone, piles of charred wood and stone. A few still stood, burned out and hollow, or missing their roofs. Ash flew around us like snow, collecting on our hair and sticking to our wet clothes. We should go to the office, I said. Get inside. We can gather up supplies and then try to go out and search for Lee. Chubbs' feet slowed beside me, and I saw for the first time how red his eyes were. Ruby. Don't say it, I warned, my voice sharp. It wasn't an option. Don't. I didn't want to think about Lee. I didn't want to think about Zoo or the other kids who had gotten out of camp. We had to keep moving. If I stopped now, I knew I would never be able to start again. The front rooms were clear. The boxes and tubs had been removed. I forced Chubbs to walk behind me when I slipped into the storage room, but it was empty. Maybe they got him, Chubbs said, rubbing his head. I grimaced. When have we ever been that lucky? Upstairs, the bedroom was perfect. Before he left, Clancy had made his bed and put away the stack of papers and boxes, and it appeared dusted. I ripped the white curtain back, joining the two halves of the room while Chubbs fussed with the TV, clicking the power button on and off. They cut the electricity, he said. Want to bet they cut the water, too? I collapsed down in Clancy's office chair and pressed my face against the dark wood. Chubbs tried to peel Liam's wet jacket off my shoulders, but I wouldn't let him. Thank you for coming to find me, I said, closing my eyes. You dumbass, said Chubbs affectionately. He patted me on the back, always running right into trouble. When I didn't move, I felt his hand still on my shoulder. Ruby? Why would he do this? I whispered. Everything in this room reminded me of Clancy, and the smell of the way he had organized his books by color on the shelves. He just threw them all to the wolves. Chubbs squatted down beside me, his knees cracking like an old man's. His hand never let go of my arm, but he seemed to struggle with what he wanted to say next. Far be it from me to even approach untangling that hellhole of a mind, he said carefully, but I think he just liked being in control, in charge. It made him feel powerful, to manipulate people because he knew outside of this place he was just as vulnerable as the rest of us. There are some people like that, you know. The darkest minds tend to hide behind the most unlikely faces. He put on a good leader act, but he wasn't like Lee or Jack. He didn't want to help kids because he believed everyone deserved to feel strong and protect themselves. Clancy was only ever thinking of himself. He would never have jumped in front of another person, and he never would have taken a bullet. At that, I sat up. I thought Jack was shot escaping. Chubb shook his head. Jack was shot protecting me. He protected me because he took a deep breath, because he thought I couldn't protect myself. I didn't realize how much he'd taught me. I'm so sorry, I said, feeling tears prick at the back of my eyes, for everything. Me too, he said after a minute, and I didn't need to look back to know that I was crying too. The laptop was stored in the top drawer of his desk, the note taped to the top of it, glaringly yellow. Ruby, I lied before. I would have run. CG. Chubbs, I called, waving him over. The power on chime was oddly sweet. Little bells. He just left it here? Chubbs asked, tapping his fingers against the desk. Is the wireless card still there? It was, but Clancy had taken care to wipe everything else from the computer. Only the icon for the internet was left, sitting in the middle of the screen. Why does the clock in the corner say 15? Chubbs asked, sitting down in the chair. I leaned over to see what he was pointing at. The battery life. We only had 15 minutes. That asshole, I fumed. Chubbs shook his head. It's better than nothing. As long as the connection holds, we can try to use it to figure out a way to out of here. We can even look up Jack's father's new address. And post your message to your parents, I said, feeling a frail wave of happiness cut through me. It's okay. I'd rather use these 14 minutes to find Jack's dad, he said. I might even be able to put a call through to him if the computer has a microphone. I didn't dare try to call his own parents. Seriously, I began. It'll take you 2 seconds to post the message. Do you remember it? Enough to make it work, he said. I moved around the room listlessly, listening to him type, taking in the room's stale smell. My feet drew me over to the side of Clancy's bed, where I finally stopped, my anger at him overwhelming even anxiety. I felt it. The window was coated in soot and protested bitterly when I tried to throw it open. The flood of fresh air that rushed in made it worth the fight. I leaned forward, bracing my arms against the sill. The camp was spread out before me in piles of ash and scorched earth, but it was all too easy to imagine where clusters of kids had once stood, waiting to get their food by the fire pit. When I closed my eyes, I could hear the laughter and radio drifting up to me, taste the spice of chili and some wood smoke in the air. I saw Liam below, the firelight turning his hair pure gold as he bent his head to in quiet conversation with the others. When my eyes opened, I was no longer just imagining him. I tore out of the room, ignoring the way Chubbs's voice followed me. I stumbled down the stairs, trying to take too many at once, flew through the entryway and out the door, and was barely hanging from its frame. He was down the trail, back towards the cabins. I struggled to get around the maze of fallen trees and buildings. His battered face was twisted with grief and fear. He could barely limp through the wreckage. Lee! The words exploded out of me. He dropped the charred wood from his hands and struggled over to the tree, blindly fighting his way through its leaves and branches, seeing me, believing and not believing it all at once. Oh my God. I threw my arms around his neck and nearly took us both down. Thank you, he was whispering. Thank you, thank you. And then he was kissing my face, every inch of it he could find, wiping away the tears and soot, chanting my name. Liam wasn't the only one who escaped, but he was the only one who came back. He had relived the night for us as we sat in Clancy's office, eating what food was left in the supply room. Chubbs had the laptop at his side, checking every few minutes for a message from his parents or rechecking the address he had found for Jack's dad. When the fighting had broken out, it was enough for us surprise that most of the watch kids couldn't get to the cabins from the outer gates in time to make a real difference. The ones who were off duty came to our cabin and forced him. Carried me is more like it, Liam said bitterly, away, running for one of the hidden side trails that had been marked for this exact purpose. They moved until morning, not stopping until they reached that same stretch of highway that they had picked us up on. There were maybe 20 at most, he said, gripping my hand, all in bad shape. Liv and Mike found a working car and piled the ones that were scary bad into the back to go find a hospital. But what about the rest of them? I asked. They split. Liam rubbed his eyes and winced. The skin there was still tender, blooming to black. Why didn't you? Chubbs demanded. What the hell is the matter with you, that you'd come back here knowing that there could still be PSFs? Liam only snorted. You think that mattered to me for a second when there was a chance the two of you were still here too? We didn't have time to waste. We all knew the PSFs well enough to know that there was a chance they would double back and check for survivors. The two of them went to work immediately in the supply closet, trying to figure out how much food we could carry with us. I tried to be useful too, but I could feel my attention drifting upstairs to Clancy's desk. I finally gave in to my restlessness and left the two of them locked in an argument over canned food. I made my way back upstairs, patting the inside pocket of Liam's jacket to make sure Jack and Chubbs' damp letters were still there. There were 2 minutes left of the laptop's battery. The power icon was flashing, warning that reserves were low. The screen dimmed and the lights in the keyboard switched off. I typed as fast as I could, searching the online white pages for Ruby Ann Daly, Virginia Beach. No results. I tried again, just with her name but no location. A listing did pop up, but it was for Salem. I hadn't lived there in close to a decade, but I recognized my parents' address when I saw it. 1 minute and 15 seconds. I looked in the website history for the site Charles had talked about, the one that lets you make calls, and typed in a phone number. I lost 2 seconds with each ring. I didn't think I'd want to talk to her as much as hear her speak. Going to her wasn't an option for me anymore. There were more important things to take care of. But I needed to know that she was still out there, that there was still one more person in the world who remembered me. It clicked. My heart jumped at my throat, my fingers curling against the desk. My mother's voice. Hello, you've reached the residence of Jacob, Susan, and Ruby Daly. I don't know why I started to cry then. Maybe I was exhausted. Maybe I was just tired of how hard everything had become. I was happy that the three of them were together, that my mom and dad had fixed their family and replaced one Ruby with another. The thing I realized most over the past few days was how important it was for us to take care of one another and stick together. And they were taking care of each other. Good. Good. But it didn't mean that I wasn't going to close my eyes and pretend, if only for a few minutes, that I was the Ruby who lived on Millwood Drive. Chapter 30. Hours later, when it was just the three of us, back on the road, we finally had a chance to tell Liam exactly what had happened to us the night before. Thank God Chubbs found you, Liam said, shaking his head. You knew him better than any of us, and you still went. I really thought I could control him, I said, leaning my forehead against the cool window. I'm an idiot. Yes, you are, Chubbs agreed, but you're our idiot, so be more careful next time. Co-signed, Liam said, hooking his fingers over mine on top of the armrest. We found the car abandoned along the side of the road a few miles west of East River, and picked it only because it still had a quarter tank of gas. Driving in this car was nothing like driving in Betty. Chubbs's long legs dug into the back of my seat, and the car smelled like old Chinese food. Still, it was running. After a while, it would become ours. There's another one, Chubb said, tapping on his window. I opened my eyes and craned my neck back, catching a quick look at the white pole. On top of it was a white box, and on top of that was a small antenna. Cameras everywhere. Maybe we should get off the highway, Liam suggested. No, Chubb said. We've seen two whole cars since we got on the 64, and it'll take us twice as long to get to Annandale if we get off. They'll be watching for Betty, anyway, not this car. Liam and I shared a look. Tell me again what your mom's message said. She said to make a reservation at my aunt's restaurant and wait for them in the kitchen, Chubb said. I did that from East River, so we should be set to meet them there tonight. My aunt will probably even feed us. Let's drop you off first, then, Liam said. No, Chubb said. I want to deliver Jack's letter. Chubbs. Don't Chubbs me, he snapped. I owe Jack a lot. I want to do this. The address for Jack's father was a Days Inn motel, far away from Annandale's neighborhoods and sprawled homes. Liam seemed to think that the motel had been converted into a temporary housing complex for workers rebuilding D.C., but there was no way to prove this theory until a rickety old bus pulled alongside our car in the parking lot and unloaded a dozen dust-covered men, clutching neon vests and hard hats. Room 103, Liam said, leaning over the steering wheel. He squinted with his good eye. The guy in the red shirt, yeah, that's him. Jack looked a lot like him. The man was short and square, with a graying mustache and a wide nose. Chubbs reached between us, plucked the wrinkled letter out of my hand. Slow down, Turbo, Liam said, clicking the car's lock on. We haven't even checked to make sure he's not being watched. We've been out here for almost an hour. Do you see anyone? The only other cars in the parking lot are empty. We lay low, like you wanted, and it worked. He reached over and pulled the lock manually. Liam stared at him for a moment before relenting. All right, just be careful, will you? He watched him scurry across the parking lot, glancing around, making sure that there really was no one watching room 103. He tossed a told you so look over his shoulder. Nice, Liam said. Real nice. I reached over and rubbed his shoulder. You know you'll miss him. It's insane, isn't it? He said with a light laugh. What am I going to do without him telling me how dangerous it is to open canned food the wrong way? Liam waited until Chubbs had raised his hand and knocked before unbuckling his seatbelt to lean over and give me a light kiss. What was that for? I said, laughing. To get your mind on the right track, he said. After we take him home, we have to figure out how to find Zoo and the others before the PSFs do. What if... The door to 103 cracked open, and the face of Mr. Fields appeared, tired and suspicious. Chubbs lifted the wrinkled letter and extended it out to him. I wished Chubbs had turned at an angle so we could have made out what he was saying. The man's face flushed crimson, so dark it matched his work shirt. He yelled something, loud enough that his next-door neighbor opened their curtains to see what was happening. This is bad, Liam said, unlocking his door. I knew I should have had him practice with me first. The door shut in Chubb's face, only to open again, all the way. I saw the flash of silver, saw the Chubbs raise his hands and take a step back. The gunshot tore through the sunset, and by the time I screamed, Chubbs was already on the ground. We ran toward the room, screaming for him. All the complex's residents were standing outside now, mostly men, some women. Their faces were monstrous blurs. Jack's father raised his shaking gun towards us, but Liam threw him back into the room and pulled the door shut with a sweep of his hand. My knees slid across the loose asphalt as I dropped down beside Chubbs. His eyes were open, staring at me, blinking, alive. He tried to tell me something, but I couldn't hear over the screaming from inside 103. Fucking freaks, get out of here, you goddamn freaks. Bright red blood bubbled up from below Chubbs's right shoulder, spreading out over his shirt with hundreds of gliding fingers. I couldn't do anything at first. It didn't look real. Liam diving for the man's gun, pointing it at room 104 and 105. Not real. It's okay, someone said behind us. Liam rolled around, his fingers on the trigger, his face set in stone. The man raised his hands. He was holding a small phone. I'm just calling 911. It's okay. We'll get him help. Don't let them call, Chubbs gasped. Don't let them take me. His words choked on the words. He choked on the words. I need to get home. Liam looked over his shoulder. Grab his legs, Ruby. Don't move him, the man from 104 said. You're not supposed to move him. Jack's father appeared behind us again, but the man with the cell phone tackled him back into the room and kicked the door shut behind him. Grab him, Liam said, tucking the gun into the waistband of his jeans. I slipped my arms under Chubb's, carrying him the way he had carried me. One of the other men stepped forward, maybe to help, to stop us, maybe to help. Don't touch him, I screamed. They backed off, but only just. Chubbs pressed his own hands against his wound, his eyes wide and unblinking. Chubbs, Liam took his legs, and together we carried him. The men called after us, telling us the ambulance would be there any minute. The ambulance, along with every PSF. The soldiers would have saved him. They wouldn't. They would rather see a freak kid die. Don't let them take me, Chubb squeezed out. Keep my legs below my chest, Lee. Don't lift them so high. Not for chest wounds. Breathing difficult. It wasn't the babbling that sent the spikes of fear straight into my heart, but the unending pulse of blood leaking out from behind his hands. He was shaking, but not crying. Don't let them take me. I climbed back into the back seat first, pulling Chubbs in behind me. His blood soaked through the front of my shirt, burning against my skin. Keep pressure on it, Chubbs told me. Harder, Ruby, harder. I'm going to try to hold it in with his abilities, I think. The blood did seem to slow, somewhat, when his hands covered it again. But how long could it actually last? My hands covered his, shaking so hard they probably did more harm than good. God, I was saying, oh my God, don't close your eyes. Talk to me. Keep talking to me. Tell me what to do. The car squealed as we turned out of the parking lot. Liam hit the gas as hard as he could, slamming his palms down against the steering wheel. Shit, shit, shit. Take me home, Chubbs begged. Ruby, make him take me home. You'll be fine, I told him, leaning over so he could see my eyes. My dad. No, Lee, hospital. I wasn't speaking in sentences, and Chubbs wasn't either. Not anymore. He made a sound like he was choking on his own tongue. When the glimpses came, they were washed in the same bright red as his blood. A man sitting in a large armchair, reading. A beautiful woman leaning across a kitchen table. A cross-stitch pattern. An emergency room sign. The black at the edge of my vision was curling up. Someone had taken a knife and driven it straight down into my brain. Alexandria is a half-hour away, Liam shouted, turning back over his shoulder. I'm not taking you there. Fairfax Hospital, Chubbs wheezed out. My dad. Tell them to page Dad. Where is it? Liam demanded. He looked at me, but I had no idea either. It occurred to me that there was a chance we wouldn't be driving around for so long that Chubbs would die. He would bleed out right here, right now, in my lap. After everything, Liam whipped the car around so hard I had to brace Chubbs and me from flying off the seat. I bit my tongue in an effort to keep from screaming again. Keep talking to him, Liam said. Chubbs. Charles. I don't know when and where he had lost his glasses. His eyes were red at the edges, staring up at my face. I tried to hold his gaze for as long as I could, but he was trying to hand me something. Chubbs lifted his hand from where it had fallen across his stomach. Jack's letter, its edges soaked in wet, sticky blood, but open, waiting to be read. The handwriting was small and cramped. Each letter had a ghostly halo around it from the time it had been spent submerged with the two of us in the lake. Some of it was completely gone. Dear Dad, when you sent me to school that morning, I thought you loved me, but now I see you for what you really are. You called me a monster and a freak, but you're the one that raised me. Tell him to read. Chubbs licked his lips. I had to lean down to hear his voice over the wind outside. Tell Lee to read my letter. I wrote it. It was for him. Charles, I said. Promise. Whatever lodged itself in my throat made it impossible to speak. I nodded. A rush of blood bubbled under our hands, coming faster than before. Where is it? Liam was shouting. Chubbs, where's the hospital? You have to tell me where it is. The car began to quiver, then howl, sounding more like beast than machine. Liam hit a pothole in the road that sent the front hood flying, along with a cloud of gray-blue smoke. We got another 10, maybe 20 feet before the car jerked to a dead stop. I looked up, meeting his gaze. I can fix it, Liam swore, his voice breaking. I can fix it. Just keep him talking, okay? I can fix this. I can. I waited until I heard the door slam behind him before I closed my eyes. Chubbs had gone so still, so pale, and no amount of shaking or yelling would bring him back out of it. I felt his blood leak past my hands, scarlet under the overcast sky, and I thought about what he had said the night Sue left us. It's over. It's all over. And it was. The unnatural calm that settled over me told me as much. All along, I'd been fighting. I'd been fighting the moment I left Thurmond, struggling against the restraints of everyone wanting to wrap around me, kicking and clawing against the inevitability. But I was so tired now. So tired. I couldn't deny what part of me had known from the moment the PSFs had burned my world down, what part of me had known all along. What had Miss Finch said all those years ago? There were no do-overs, no comebacks. That once someone was gone, they were gone forever. Dead flowers didn't bloom, and they didn't grow. The dead chubs wouldn't smile, spout off rambling sentences, wouldn't pout, wouldn't laugh. The dead chubs was unimaginable. I reached into the pocket of Liam's jacket and pushed the panic button. 20 seconds clicked by, each one feeling longer than the last. It gave a little vibration, a little acknowledgement, and I released it. Outside, Liam was banging metal against metal, growing more helpless and angry by the second. I wanted to call him back to us, to have him next to Chubbs, because I was sure this was it. I was sure he was going to die right there in my arms, less than 24 hours after he had saved me, and I couldn't do anything for him other than hold him. Do not die, I whispered. You cannot die. You have to take calculus and go to football games and go to prom and apply for colleges. And you absolutely cannot die. You can't. You can't. I detached completely, a familiar numbness took hold of my entire body. I was vaguely aware of Liam shouting something outside. My arms tightened around Chubbs' chest, and I heard feet shuffling against the loose asphalt outside. All I could smell was the smoke and blood. All I could hear was my own heartbeat. That's when the door across from me opened, and Kate's face appeared. And that was when I began to cry. Really cry. Oh, Ruby, she said, in anguish. Ruby. Please help him, I sobbed. Please. 2 pairs of hands reached in to lift me out. My arms were still wrapped around Chubbs, but I couldn't move my hands. There was so much blood. I kicked and butted against whoever was trying to pull us apart. Ruby, sweetheart, Kate said, suddenly next to me. Ruby, you have to let go now. I had made a mistake. This was a mistake. I never should have called them. A terrible noise filled the air, and it wasn't until Liam was there, holding me back, his arms around my shoulders, that I realized I had been screaming the entire time. There were 3 cars surrounding our smoking, useless hunk of metal, all SUVs. If you get him help, we'll go with you, I heard Liam tell Kate. We'll go with you. We'll do whatever you want. No, I cried. No. Liam was holding me steady, but I felt the way his arms shook. We watched him load Chubbs' still form into the back of one of the SUVs, and the door had barely shut before it tore off down the highway. Chubbs' blood was still warm on my skin, cooling every second, and it made me want to crawl out of it. Please, Liam said, his voice breaking. Calm down. You have to calm down. I've got you. I'm right here. There was a pinch at the back of my neck, there and gone, faster than taking a breath. All at once, I felt my muscles relax. I was being dragged forward on limp legs, the image of the nearest white SUV swimming in and out of focus. Lee? I wanted to say, but my tongue was too heavy. Someone slid a dark hood over my face, and I was being lifted up into the air, like my father used to do when I was just a kid, when I thought I could grow up and fly. And then the real darkness came. Chapter 31. It was the cold water that woke me more than the woman's soft voice. You're all right, she was saying. Ruby, you're gonna be fine. I'm not sure who she thought she was fooling with her sweet little BS, but it wasn't me. The smell of rosemary was back, filling my nose with a memory that felt both ancient and new. Which was it? When I felt the press of her hand against mine, I forced my eyes open, blinking again into the sunlight. Kate's face swam in and out of my vision. She stood across the room, drawing the gauzy curtains shut. It helped somewhat, but I was still having trouble fixing my sight on any one thing. It was glancing off bright, shiny surfaces. A white dresser, pale purple wallpaper, a flashing alarm clock, a mirror on the opposite wall, and our reflections there. Is this real? I whispered. Kate sat at the edge of my bed, the exact same way she had at Thurmond, only now she wasn't smiling. Behind her, Martin leaned against the wall in camo pants and boots. He looked like a completely different person to me. I hadn't fully recognized him at first. The roundness in his face had thinned out, sinking his eyes further into his skull. Someone had been dumb enough to give him a gun. "We're in a safe house outside of Maryland," she said. "Lee? Safe here too." Not safe, I thought. Never safe with you. I felt the urge to run rise deep down into my bones. It was instinct now. Exhaustion and pain had stripped every other sensation away from me. My eyes scanned the room, 2 windows, the only other exit aside from the back door. I could break the glass. I forced Kate back with a single brush of my mind, get Liam, and we could be gone before anyone noticed. It could work. "Don't even try," Kate said, following my eyes. She slipped a small silver object from the back pocket of her jeans and held it out to me, the rough pattern of the speaker face up. "Even if you could get past me, every single one of the agents downstairs is carrying one of these on them. Judging by your last hit of calm control, you're not going to be of much use to Liam when they take him out and shoot him for your insubordination." I jerked away. They wouldn't, but I saw the truth of it in her eyes. They would. They risked everything to break me out of Thurmond. They fought off skip tracers to get me back. I had already seen in Rob's mind that despite what they claimed their mission was, they didn't have any qualms about offering a few kids if it meant getting the ones they wanted. "How could you even think about it?" Martin hissed. "Do you know how much time she wasted looking for you?" Kate waved him off. When she leaned toward me again, I saw there were splatters of blood across the front of her shirt. Dark. Dried. The memory came into painful sharp focus. Chubbs. What happened to Chubbs? Kate looked down at her hands. Something in me clenched. "Honestly," she said, "I'm not sure. We haven't been able to contact the group of agents that took him, but I know they reached the hospital." Kate reached for my hands, but I wouldn't let her take them. The thought turned my stomach. "He's safe. They'll make sure he's taken care of." "You don't know that," I said. "You said it yourself." "But I believe it," Kate said. I wanted to tell her that her beliefs weren't worth a damn thing when she spoke again. "I've spent the last month looking for you. I stayed in this area, hoping you'd eventually show up. But Ruby, where were you? Where did you go? You look like East River," I said. Kate sucked a sharp breath. So the League had heard about what had happened. "Oh, that's perfect," Martin said, pushing himself up off the wall. He slid the strap of his rifle over his shoulder and stalked toward me. "Sitting around on your ass for weeks doing nothing? Figures. I've been actually making a difference. I've been part of something." He made as if to touch my leg, but I grabbed his wrist tight in my hand. I wanted to see what he had gone through for myself. The training, the screaming instructors. I latched onto the strongest of his memories and spread it open in my mind. I wanted to glimpse our future. Martin's memories bubbled up like hot tar, forming and shaping itself until I was standing where he had stood. The package that had been in his hands was now heavy in mine. I felt the weight of it cramp my fingers, but my eyes were focused on the only climbing numbers on the elevator's display. 11, 12, 13. The bell dinged as it passed each floor, heading to 17. I cast a sly look to the girl standing next to me, dressed in a skirt suit, her young face caked with enough makeup to age her well beyond her years. She clutched her leather tote bag to her side like a shield, and it was the only thing, when she released it, that I noticed her hands were shaking. I was wearing a FedEx uniform. I could see myself through Martin's eyes, reflected in on the elevator's silver doors as they slid open. We were in an office building of some kind. It was dark out, but there were still men and women working, tucked away in their cubicles, their eyes glued to their computer screens. I didn't stop, though, and neither did the girl at my side. Her face had broken out in a sweat, heavy enough to smear her makeup, and I felt a stab of irritation go through me at the sight of it. The largest office was located at the far back corner of the building, and that was where I was headed. The girl all but let out a sigh as I left her by the drinking fountains. She was there for backup. This was my mission. The door to the office was closed, but I could see someone's shape behind the frosted glass. He's still here. And so, thankfully, was his executive assistant. She looked confused at the sight of the package, but all it took was a single stroke of the back of her hand. Her eyes went glassy, unfocused, and I knew I had her. The elderly woman got up from her chair and turned toward the office door. I left the package right on her desk. Free of that weight, I hustled back through the maze of cubicles, catching the eye of the girl by the fountain. When I jerked my head toward the elevator, she followed, looking back and forth between the elevator bank and the office floor, her lip caught between her teeth. She didn't do anything stupid until we were outside, though. I jogged down the steps and head for the waiting FedEx van and the dark-haired man sitting in the driver's seat. I was already at the door when I realized she wasn't behind me. The girl was frozen at the top of the marble steps, her eyes wide and her face as pale as the stone beneath her. She was going to run back into the building to warn them about the explosive, to warn them. Weak. The words shot through my mind as crisp as they had been drilled there. Ditch and die. Double-cross the League and die. I took the handgun from under my seat and leaned out of the open window, but I never got a shot off. Upstairs, high on the 17th floor of the building, an explosion blew out of the shower of glass and concrete, and she disappeared under their weight. Martin's hand stayed at my side, and he stopped moving. This is what it means to be one of them, I thought. This is what they will turn us into. I had slipped into his mind to confirm my suspicions, but even I was surprised at how easy it had been. Weeks ago, when we got out, I hadn't been able to fend him off. Now all I had to do was brush by me, and I overpowered him with a single touch. Clancy had taught me well. I looked at Martin again, feeling strange, a sort of pity for him, not because of what was about to do, or the way I would be using him, but because he thought he knew it meant to be powerful and control. He honestly still thought he was stronger than me. I put a finger on the back of his hand, just one. "What's your name?" I asked him. The reaction from him was priceless. There wasn't an ounce of color left in his cheeks, and his lips began to smack against one another, trying to form the word, trying to call a memory that was no longer there. "Where are you from?" I could see the panic now. It caused his eyes to bulge, but I wasn't finished. "Do you know where you are now?" I almost felt guilty. Almost. When I saw the moisture began to gather at the corner of his eyes. But I also remembered how helpless and afraid he made me feel, and I regretted not having done more. The plan was forming at the back of my mind, and it was almost too terrible to acknowledge as my own. "I don't," he gasped out the words. "I don't." "Then maybe you should leave," I said in a cold voice. I barely had to push the image of him doing it. He bolted from the room, slamming the door behind him, running from the scary monster. Kate stared at him, an unreadable expression on her face. Impressive. I thought he could do with an attitude adjustment, I said. I kept my voice cold and flat, just the way I thought she'd want it. I had seen enough to know the viciousness these people demanded, and I needed them to want me. Since it seems we'll be spending a lot of time together now. Her pale blonde hair fell over her shoulders, and she bowed her head. "I don't think—" But Kate didn't deny it. We were trapped here. She had accepted Liam's deal. "I guess it was never really a choice to begin with," I continued. "Eventually you were going to have to bring me in. You are a valuable asset to the Resistance." Kate lifted her hand toward me, only to drop it before she could touch my face. Smart lady. She knew what I could do. "I hoped you would come to see that on your own terms." "What about Lee?" "He's a security risk, and now he's seen the safe house and the agents here. He's safer with us, Ruby. The president wants him dead. I'm sure he'll come to see that, eventually." My hands twisted against the pale bed sheets. A weapon. Liam as a weapon. Liam who could barely lose his temper without feeling guilty. He had fought so hard to escape this violence, and I'd turned him right back toward it. They'd put their hands on him and press him into their mold, and he'd come out the other end of it as the same dark creature he had struggled to avoid becoming. I was breathing hard now, though. Inwardly, I was calm as the waters on the East River's lake. All at once, the final piece clicked into place, and I knew what I was going to do. "Okay," I said. "I'll stay, and I won't fight you or manipulate you. But if you want me to do as you say, if you want me to use my abilities or do testing on me, I have one condition. You have to let Lee go." "Ruby," she began, shaking her head. "It's too dangerous for everyone involved." "He's a blue. You don't need him. He will never be a fighter, not like you want. And if he stays here, you will kill him. You will kill every good part of him." "I can do so much now," I told her, "but you won't see another hint of it until you let him go, until you swear you will never chase him down." Kate watched me for a moment, a hand pressed to her mouth. I could see the indecision in her face. I had used Martin to show her exactly what I could offer them, and he, apparently, had proven to them how valuable an orange could be. These were not, however, the terms she would have chosen. "All right," she said finally. "All right, he can go." "How do I know you'll keep your promise?" I asked. Kate stood and reached again into her pocket. The silver calm control device, the only thing keeping me out of her head, was still warm when she pressed it into my palm. My fingers closed around hers. So help me God, I said slowly, clearly, when Kate looked up at me. If you go back on your word, I will tear you apart, and I won't stop, not ever, until I've destroyed your life and the lives of every single person in this organization. Believe me, you may not always keep your promises, but I do. She nodded at me once, and there was something almost like pride in her eyes. Understood, Kate said, and we did. They kept Liam in the bedroom at the other end of the hall, in a room painted in a soft blue, the kind of colors you'd only find in the sky just before sunrise. Maybe it might have been a nursery once. There were clouds painted on the ceilings, and a few pieces of furniture left seemed too small for an average adult. Liam sat on the tiny bed with his back to me, at first. As I shut the door behind me, I thought he was staring out the window. As I came closer, I saw he was actually fixated on the wrinkled sheet of paper in his hand. The bed dipped as I crawled across it. I wrapped my arms around his chest from behind, pressing my cheek against his, letting my hands wander until they found his steady heartbeat. His eyes shut and leaned back. What are you looking at? I whispered. He handed me the paper wordlessly as I moved to sit beside him. Jack Field's letter. You were right, Liam said after a moment. You were so right. We should have read it. We would have known not to bother. It was the dead way he spoke, so flat, so coated with grief, that made me crumple the letter and throw it across the room. He only shook his head, pressing a hand over his eyes. I fumbled with the inside pocket of his jacket, where I had stashed Chubbs's letter all those days ago. Liam watched me pull it out and sagged beside me. He told me he didn't write it for them, I said. He wrote it for you. He wanted you to read it. I don't want to. Yes, you do. Because when you get out of here, you'll want something to say when you see him again. Ruby. Now he sounded angry. His arm dropped from around my shoulders, and he stood up. Do you really think that if he lives, they're going to let us see him? Do you think they're even going to let us stay together? That's not how these people work. They're going to control our every move, right down to who we see and what we eat. Trust me, it'll be a precious piece of luck if we even find out he's alive. Never mind if they've brought him in for training. Liam paced the room once, twice, 3 times, and it felt like an hour had passed before I worked up the nerve to open Chubbs's letter myself. The room was silent for a long time. What? Liam finally asked, his voice laced with fear. What does it say? It was blank. There was nothing written on the sheet of paper aside from Chubbs's parents' names and their address. There had never been, not a single drop of ink. I don't understand, I said, passing it to him. That could have been right. Maybe he had lost the original letter or was carrying the real one. When I looked up again, Liam was crying, one hand destroying the letter in his fist, the other hand pressed in his eyes. And then I realized I already knew the answer. Chubbs hadn't written anything because he didn't think he had to. He thought he was going to be able to tell his parents everything he wanted to say in person. He believed he was going to get home. Liam's knees buckled out from under him, and he sat down on the bed. His forehead came to rest down against my shoulder, and I wrapped both my arms around him. He did believe you, I wanted to say. All along, he believed you. I felt so much older then, not 16, not 60, not even 100, but 1,000 years old. Older, but not brittle. I felt like one of the old oak trees that grew along the highway overlooking the Shenandoah Valley, with deep roots and a strong core. He gets to go, I thought. He gets to go home. For a long time, I did nothing but hold on to him. I wanted to memorize the way his hair curled at the ends, the scar at the edge of his lips. I had never felt time sting as sharply as I did then. Why did it only ever seem to freeze or move forward at the barrel speed? Crazy thing is, I had all these plans, he whispered. What we were going to do, all the places I was going to take you. I really wanted you to meet Harry. The window breathed an afternoon light. I felt his hand trail down the length of my arm. We'll be okay, Liam said. We just can't let them separate us. They won't, I whispered. I was thinking. I know this is going to sound so corny, but if there's one good thing that came out of all this, it was that I got to meet you. I would go through it all again. Tears pricked at my eyes. I would, as long as it meant I'd met you. You really think that? Liam sat up and pressed his lips against my hair. Because frankly, the way I see it, you and me, inevitable. Let's say we didn't get stuck in those god-awful camps. No, just listen. I'm going to tell you the amazing story of us. Liam cleared his throat and turned to fully face me. So, it's the summer, and you're in Salem, suffering through another boring hot July and working part-time at an ice cream parlor. Naturally, you're completely oblivious to the fact that all the boys from your high school who visit daily are more interested in you than the 31 flavors. You're focused on school and all your dozens of clubs because you want to go to a good college and save the world. And just when you think you're going to die if you have to take another practice SAT, your dad asks if you want to go visit your grandma in Virginia Beach. Yeah? I leaned my forehead against his. What about you? Me? Liam said, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. I'm in Wilmington, suffering through another boring hot summer, working one last time in Harry's repair shop before going off to some fancy university, where, I might add, my roommate will be stuck-up know-it-all with a heart of gold named Charles Carrington Merriweather IV. But he's not part of this story. Not yet. His fingers curled around my hip, and I could feel him trembling, even as his voice was steady. To celebrate, Mom decides to take us up to Virginia Beach for the week. We're only there for a day when I start catching glimpses of this girl with dark hair walking around town, her nose stuck in a book, earbuds in, and blasting music. But no matter how hard I try, I never get to talk to her. Then, as our friend Fate would have it, on our very last day at the beach, I spot her. You. In the middle of playing a volleyball game with Harry, but it feels like everyone else disappears. You're walking toward me, big sunglasses on, wearing this light green dress, and I somehow know that it matches your eyes. And then, because let's face it, I'm basically an Olympic god when it comes to sports, I managed to volley the ball right into your face. Ouch, I said with a light laugh. Sounds painful. Well, you can probably guess how I'd react to that situation. I'd offer to carry you to the lifeguard station, but you look like you want to murder me just at the suggestion. Eventually, thanks to my sparkling charm and wit, and because I'm so pathetic you take pity on me, you let me buy you ice cream. And then you start telling me about how you work in an ice cream shop in Salem, and how frustrated you feel that you still have 2 years before college. And somehow, I get your email, or screen name, or maybe, if I'm really lucky, your phone number. Then we talk. I go to college, you go back to Salem, but we talk all the time, about everything, and sometimes do that stupid thing where we run out of things to say, and just stop talking and listen to one another breathing until one of us falls asleep. And Chubbs makes fun of you for it, I added. Oh, ruthlessly, he agreed. And your dad hates me because he thinks I'm corrupting his beautiful, sweet daughter, but still lets me visit from time to time. That's when you tell me about tutoring a girl named Suzume, who lives a few cities away. But who's the coolest little girl on the planet? I managed to squeeze out. Yep, Liam said. Want to try for the ending? By then, I couldn't help myself. I brought both my hands up to my face, pressing my fingers against my eyes. I had to do it now, or I never would. We couldn't hide up here forever. They could change their mind about his leaving as quickly as they had the first time. I sat up and wiped the tears off my face, gritting my teeth. Liam pushed himself up so that he was sitting beside me on the edge of the bed, a concerned look on his face. For a moment, I was terrified that he knew exactly what I was about to do. He tilted his head to the side, a small smile turning up the corner of his lips. I tried to smile back, but inside I was breaking apart. What? When they brought us to the camps, they took everything. They stripped away our families and friends, took our clothes, took our future. The only thing we got to keep were our memories. Now I was about to take those from him too. Close your eyes, I whispered. I'm going to finish the story. I felt the trickle at the back of my mind and let it turn into a roar. And when I kissed him, and when my lips pressed against him one last time, slipping inside his mind was as easy as taking his hand had been. I felt him jerk back, heard him say my name in alarm, but I didn't let him get away. I pulled myself from his mind, day by day, piece by piece, memory by memory, until there was nothing of Ruby left to weigh him down or keep him bound to my side. It was a strange, unwinding sensation, one I had never felt before, or maybe one I had never recognized until that moment. The problem of Chubbs rose in the back of my mind, and I had a split second to make a decision. If he was alive, and he had to be, there was no alternative for me. The League would bring him in. But if Liam knew that, he'd come back to find a way to get him out, and the deal would be for nothing. I would take care of Chubbs. I would be the one to help him give the League the slip. There was no reason why Liam couldn't think that his friend made it home to his parents. No reason he needed another distraction from getting home himself. It was a simple adjustment, a quick patch over an ugly memory. And then I was out of air and out of time. The door behind me opened, and I pulled away from Liam. He stayed stiff as a board, his hands resting on his knees, his eyes shut tight. Kate looked back and forth between us, her brows drawing together. I stood and moved to her side. A moment later, Liam's bright eyes opened, and he was seeing me. He just wasn't seeing Ruby. "What happened?" he asked, looking between me and Kate. He reached up to touch his face, which was still swollen and battered. "You had a car accident," I said. "The League picked you up." Kate stiffened beside me, and I caught the sudden comprehension fall over her features out of the corner of my eye. "The League," he repeated, his eyes narrowing. "Yes, but if you feel well enough, you can go," Kate said when she recovered. "Your brother asked us to give you some money for a bus ticket." "I bet he did," Liam grumbled, as he searched the grounds for his shoes. Why can't I remember the accident? I'm not sure Kate realized how plainly she was wearing the shock on her face. Her hands floated up toward my shoulder to steady me or herself, I wasn't sure, but I stepped away. "Does your head still hurt?" I managed to choke out. I was still wearing his jacket. I couldn't bring myself to take it off. "You hit it pretty hard." "A little," he admitted. I didn't like the way he was looking at me, his brows drawn together in concentration. "And the League is just letting me go?" Kate nodded and threw an envelope. Liam threw it right back at her. "I don't want your money." "The procedure to contact your parents is also in here," she said. "I don't want it," he said. "Don't need it." "What am I supposed to tell Cole?" Liam drew himself on steady legs. "Tell him to come home, and then we can talk." He turned to me. "What about you? Are you really one of them? You look like you have a lot more sense than that." Wordlessly, I took the envelope from Kate, and when I pressed it into his hand, he didn't toss it back at me. "You better get going." "I'm not going to thank you," he told us. "I didn't ask for your help." Kate led him out into the hall. "You didn't have to. You never need to." He started down the stairs. "Hey," I called. Liam stopped, turning back up to look at me. "Be careful." His blue eyes flicked back and forth between Kate and me. "You too, darlin'." I watched him go, from the window overlooking the street, following his familiar shape as he stepped outside and closed the door behind him. No car, no one to watch over him, no one to help. He was completely free, and he looked happy, sure of himself at least. His feet instinctively knew what direction home was. Now there was nothing left to keep him from getting there. Liam passed through the white fence surrounding the house and stepped onto the sidewalk. He flipped the sweatshirt hood up over his head, glancing both ways before jogging across the street. I watched him grow smaller and smaller with each step. "All the world will be your enemy, prince with 1,000 enemies," I thought, "and whenever they catch you, they will kill you. But first they must catch you. Digger, listener, runner, prince with a swift warning. Be cunning and full of tricks, and your people shall never be destroyed." Kate came up behind me, stroking a hand through my hair. "You'll be happy with us," she said. "I'll take care of you." I drew the gauzy curtains shut, my fingers sliding over their silky surface. I watched her for a moment, searching for the tell that would reveal her lie. I wonder if she still thought that I was the girl she carried out of Thurmond, who cried the first time she'd seen the stars. Because she didn't know that there were two of me now, split between everything I had wanted and everything I would now have to be. One of me, the hardest, angriest part, would say with these monsters and slowly find herself twisting into their shape. But there was another, secret Ruby. This one was as thin as a wisp of air and had struggled for so long just to be. This was the one that Liam carried with him, without knowing. The one that would ride back in his pocket. whisper words of encouragement, tell him that he was born to chase the light. For the first time in months, I heard Sam's voice whisper in my ear, "Don't be scared. Don't let them see." I turned from the window and I didn't look back.